I haven't seen anything yet, so like I haven't watched anything. I was busy today, so like I'm just let's just see. Please, after, or actually if the volume isn't like high enough, just tell me, all right?
Seekers of redemption, you were chosen.
It's the same image. It's like one new clip, maybe two. Like already,
and prepare to claim
this trailer is a red flag to me.
of the Night Lord.
Because there's clearly not a lot of effort that went into this, because this is basically you know, the same trailer as the first one. So I was going in there like expecting this to be like a different trailer, but there's basically like two clips that are different. And so already that tells me that this is a very low effort project just from the marketing, you know. Yo, Jay Hoy, thanks for the Twitch Prime sub, man. Is there anything else in there? Well, May 30th. Okay. Pre-order now and get a bonus gesture, of course. Yo, Ungone, I'm actually watching this stuff that you sent me. And that's crazy. This trailer is basically the exact same thing as the first one. So yeah, not too impressed by that. And expectations were already pretty low, but... And that's pretty much the only clip. That's crazy. There's like one other one there. There's not really nothing new in there. I think I'm just gonna jump straight to I'm gonna jump straight to what the content creators have to say. I'm gonna start with Vaati.
Recently, I played 6 hours.
Actually, was the volume fine, guys? I didn't see earlier. Was the volume for the trailer like too low? Do you want higher volume, guys? It was good? Alright. It's fine. Alright.
Recently, I played 6 hours of Elden Ring Nightreign, and we were locked in for that entire time. This game is addictive, it's intense, it's way faster paced than I expected, and I think it's gonna be a hit. So let's talk about it. Our characters have just left
Vaati
the
think it's gonna be a
roundtable
hit,
hold,
okay.
and day one is about to begin. Your goal in Nightreign is to survive each day as a ring of rain closes in around you and your team. Then, at the start of day 3, you'll fight one of 8 major bosses using all of the randomized loot and buffs that you've accumulated over
Already, I just noticed, you guys noticed, right? We got the Dark Souls 3 falling mechanic where you can roll to cancel the fall animation. I don't know if you guys noticed.
the course. Using
Let's just
all of the
rewind that. Look at
randomized
that.
out of day 3, you'll fight one of
I
8
missed that
major
mechanic.
bosses using all of the randomized loot and buffs that you've accumulated over the course of your run. Now, every session you play in Nightreign is supposed to be somewhat unpredictable. You won't always explore the same map or receive the same loot.
Holy shit, he's light rolling.
Somewhat unpredictable. You won't always explore the same map or receive the same loot or face...
Dude, this is this like night roll on night roll? This game might be night roll. But this light roll actually looks like you perma light roll, by the way. Oof, man, taking the skill out of these games, unfortunate.
You won't
Night roll, dude. That's a great that's a great code name for this game. Fucking night roll.
always explore the same map or receive the same loot or face the same enemies. The one thing, though, that I found very predictable in every single one of my Nightreign sessions was this feeling of pressure. The pressure not just to survive, but the pressure to get stronger. Because if you don't get powerful fast, there's no way you'll defeat.
The sprinting speed here does look less crazy than in the first trailer. I don't know if it's just an impression or if they slowed it down a tiny bit, but it doesn't look as bad as I initially thought, just from the first look.
You can kind of see that pressure in action here. These characters just rested at a grace and leveled up and ran, because the rain is coming. And
the new stuff looks good though, like these bird legs and shit, man. That's the From Software stuff that they do so well.
You don't have much time.
I love that.
In our playthrough session, we would have to make these split-second decisions.
The movement does look fluid, just from an animation point of view.
In our playthrough
Probably gonna break the gameplay, but it does look very fluid.
session, we would have to make these split-second decisions about where to go and what to do, and most importantly, whether we had the time to do it. So often it was a choice between defeating a boss and claiming its loot, or running away and living to fight another day. So many subtle changes have been made to the mechanics of Elden Ring as well, and all of these changes have been made in the name of speed and efficiency. For example, you can now vault easily over.
This little wall jumping does look a little janky.
Efficiency. For example, you can.
But it could be interesting because now we're just speaking like just, you know, for no reason. Like, let's just say hypothetically that this game had PvP, right? Which it doesn't. One thing that I have noticed in Elden Ring is that a lot of time in the heat of the moment, you don't necessarily use a lot of jumping for parkour because you expose yourself to getting hit while you jump. So a lot of times, like, you're going to be fighting something, and unless you have a significant distance, you can't really jump onto an object because you're basically opening yourself up to getting hit. Where in this case here, for this little wall jumping, it looks fluid and fast enough to actually be usable, like mid-combat, for instance. So, you know, I think this is actually pretty interesting from a gameplay perspective, which I think this would probably translate well for this game. I think this might actually be like one of those cases where the wall jumping might not be necessarily bad for gameplay. It might be good just from a first look.
Changes have been made in the name of speed and efficiency. For example, you can now vault easily over objects and even enemies as well to get
That's
where you
interesting.
need to go. Gone are the days. Even
I
enemies
actually
as well.
I like that. I've always wanted FromSoft to try a little of you know, enemy climbing like this. So I'm actually very welcoming to this sort of gameplay, that's for sure.
For example, you can now vault easily over objects and even enemies as well to get where you.
A little easy though to get to the weak point, like you get teleported halfway there. You know what I mean? Like with From Software and the critical box, it seems extremely generous.
Easily over objects and
A little
even
too much in
enemies as
that
well
case. Look at that.
to get where you need to go. Gone are the days where you need torrent to traverse the map. Now you can press L3 to activate a powerful sprint, and you can also activate spirit.
So they removed crouching, it seems, because if you press L3, you activate the powerful sprint. So that's interesting. So they kept the normal sprint? Is that what he means? That's very interesting.
Spirit springs free to activate. You need torrent to traverse the map. Now you can press L3 to activate a powerful sprint, and you can also activate spirit springs on foot, which vault you so high up into the air. Also, there's no fall damage in Nightreign, so from high places it's
Actually
easy
love
to
the
justify
ballista.
jumping down and getting to where you need to be. Let's talk about the different classes, the different Nightfarers that you can choose to play in this game. This is the Recluse, a mage character that, like other characters, has an ability and an ultimate.
I'm gonna be honest, that's the best looking mage character I've seen in From Software games. You know, like, seriously, I don't think I've ever seen a good mage character. or good-looking mage character. This one is though for sure.
That, like other characters, has an ability and an ultimate that you can use. They've turned the HUD off for the footage that they've given us, but I remember what these abilities and skills looked like, so I've drawn them, and this is where they are usually on screen. Like,
Wait,
so
did they
I've
replace
drawn them,
they,
they've given us.
they replaced the lock-on little dot? I mean, that's like a thing, something some people wouldn't. Sorry, I think that's something everyone would notice right away, but I'm still gonna mention it.
But I remember what these abilities and skills looked like, so I've drawn them, and this is where they are usually on screen. Your activated ability is on the left, and your ultimate is on the right. Both of these circles fill up over time, and when they're full, that's when you can use the ability.
I don't know about that. You guys saw that? Like you're basically like invincible while you cast that thing. That's kind of weak sauce.
Fill up over time, and when they're full, that's when you can use the ability or the ultimate. Now, the recluse full, that's when you can use the ability or the ultimate. Now, the recluse has an ability that is actually much more complicated than the other characters' abilities. Has an
Man, I can't get over the fact that dodging is so goddamn generous here. Like the enemies are unchanged, but look at that dodge.
ability that is actually much more
Look at that. That's clueless, man. You have to call it what it is. That's clueless. Like making a dodge system like as generous as this is completely clueless.
complicated than the other characters' abilities, and I think they designed it this way because the recluse is designed to be a backline character.
Bloodborne? Well, Bloodborne, the enemies and the game is designed to deal with that dodge system. Like here, you're fighting an Elden Ring enemy, you know?
In Nightreign, the spells you cast are tied.
That dodge is tied to that character class only? Well, yes and no, because this animation, yes, maybe. But earlier you saw the very, very long light roll from this other character. And that's basically like, even if the animation is different, the dodge distance is insanely large here. It's like longer than Bloodborne. So when you have a large dodge distance like that, there's no other way to call it than it trivializes a lot of the timing that's required.
To the weapons you pick up, so you usually only have one
Yes, I do have a code for the test tomorrow. I do.
or two or three or four spells on hand. So From Software has given mages another system to sort of micromanage while they're standing in the backline casting spells. Let me explain really quickly how it works. Basically, whenever an enemy or a teammate gets tagged by a certain type of damage, like fire or magic or holy, a little marker will appear on them, and then the recluse can absorb that type of energy, getting a little bit of mana, but more importantly, filling out one of these small orbs. Then, when you've acquired 3 elements, you can unleash the recluse's ability, generating a unique spell based on the combination of elements you've acquired.
That looks quite gimmicky, honestly. There's not much skills involved in that. It's just, you know, big kaboom. Look, flashy colors.
So, a huge part of this character's skill expression is going to be understanding intuitively what these different combinations of spell are, and whether you're in the right position to cast them. And this is just this character's ability. They obviously have an ultimate as well, and this one is more straightforward. Basically, after a short delay, you can mark nearby enemies with this red tag, and once...
I don't know, man. Being invincible while you do that, like, just that alone, right? It just, like, why did you deactivate the hitbox there while casting that thing? Like, why not make it so that the player has to somewhat time and be mindful of when they actually perform this? But instead, they made it so that you're invincible. So you can basically do that at any point. You, like, disregarding anything that's going on the battlefield, really. So to me, like, this sort of stuff is what I hate to say is basically casualizing mechanics.
It's marked. If anyone on your team hits them, they will regain health and mana, which is incredible for the sustained health of your party. Now, when you cast an ultimate from any character, your character actually becomes invincible while they're casting it, which in the case of the Recluse is especially handy, as you can see in this footage where they use it to sort of mitigate all of the aggro that they're receiving. Okay, so the Recluse is the most complicated character to explain. They also even have a passive ability, just like the other characters do, but I don't really know what the Recluse's does. I think it regenerates mana somehow. Anyway, let's talk about the next character, Wilder, who is very much a jack of all trades. Wilder's hookshot ability is on a very short cooldown, and you'll find yourself using it a lot. On small enemies, it pulls them towards you, and on larger enemies, it pulls you towards them. One thing worth noting is it's easy to chain the hookshot into different attacks, like you can see here. The hookshot can also be aimed manually, hitting the terrain and launching you forward.
That's cool.
Now, Wilder's ultimate also uses his left arm. The grappling hook opens up for an explosive blast. This blast can be charged, it can be comboed with your running animation and the hookshot animation, and it stuns enemies. In this case, it actually staggered the enemy, allowing for a critical hit, but on every single...
Just watching the gameplay here of the character running, I wonder if there's like any limitation to running like this, because it seems like the character stops once he gets near the enemy. So, like, I mean, the people who've played it would be able to answer that right away, but I'm wondering if it's just like out of combat. Is like from what I'm watching right now, it almost seems like it. And if it's not just out of combat, then how do enemies deal with you if you just keep running that fast like this? It drains stamina like crazy.
Boss, I used it against...
Yeah, we don't see the hood, so...
It also stunned them for a short amount of time, which was this unique animation that allowed...
The fast run depletes your entire stamina in combat. Oh, okay, so that's how they... Horo has the info about the sprint, I see, okay. So that's how they dealt with it. So, because my fear was, if sprinting is that fast, right? Then you can just keep running circles around enemies and basically trivialize fights by making yourself immortal just by being so fast that they can't hit you. But if it takes your entire stamina bar, then that pretty much prevents it from being used in combat.
My teammates to sort of get a moment to breathe or do extra damage. Wilder's passive ability is a one-time use effect that allows him to completely negate any instant of damage that would have killed him. You might have just seen it activate there. Basically, Wilder does this brief moment of inspired acrobatics and gets a second chance instead of being downed.
So this is like Tears of Denial type stuff.
Next, let's talk about the Guardian. So the Guardian's passive ability is this shield stance, I'm pretty sure, which increases your guarding capabilities at the expense of your movement.
This character looks super cool.
Their ability is this whirlwind attack, which seems to get rid of environmental effects like the Death Blight here, but moreover, its main function is to interrupt enemies, so that your teammates can get some...
That's gonna be super broken. Steel and I will be spamming that shit. Then fucking, we're gonna stun lock bosses with another player that uses that. Let's try that. Let's try to stun lock a boss with that.
In this way, the Guardian...
Bird people rise up, dude. Who's a birdman in here?
Is a really strong melee support character, acting as a tank, but also as a tank sort of support for other characters around you. Their ultimate too is very team-based, with this aerial dive bomb that is excellent for reviving your teammates, because remember, you have to attack your teammates to revive them. This has a second...
That seems a little easy, though, to attack teammates to revive them. That's a little strange.
Secondary effect, I'm pretty sure, of fortifying...
Because, you know, reviving a teammate is also part of, like, rewarding gameplay, right? If you can manage to, like, lure an enemy out and then run to your teammate and in some way, shape, or form manage to divert their attention long enough to revive a teammate, that's a very rewarding gameplay. But if you just need to hit them, I mean, it's definitely very easy to hit a teammate.
The teammate.
You have to hit them more than once? Okay, well, still, it's a bit strange. You have 15 seconds to do so? Okay, I see. So you can't basically be too far. It seems like it's to encourage players sticking together, maybe? I don't
that are
know.
near the area of effect, giving them increased poise for a short time. I make it sound like the Guardian is purely a support character, but that dive bomb will be excellent for clearing groups of small enemies as well, and accumulating runes from killing enemies and strengthening all of your characters and leveling up is a huge part of the game, so that kind of group clearing is a really good offensive capability as well. And speaking of offensive capabilities, this is the Duchess, who was the character that I played the most in
That everyone will be playing the most.
this demo. Her passive is this sidestep dodge that's similar to the Bloodborne dodge, making her very well suited for anyone
Not me, though.
who prefers a more aggressive playstyle. Her ability recharges extremely fast, like you can use it every 10 seconds or so, and it's a sort of stopwatch themed ability which takes into account the last few seconds of damage that that enemy has taken and duplicates it. This effect is shown by a white spirit that appears and sort of shows the damage that is
The fact that it's on the shortest cooldown definitely seems a little broken, but we will see.
being duplicated.
From the sound of it, everything that we've learned so far about this game is basically the exact opposite of balance.
Because you're so aggressive,
It's basically like power fantasy, the game, you know?
Duchess naturally gets a lot of aggro, but this is offset by her dodge, but also by her ultimate, which is a cloaking spell that cloaks you and your nearby allies, making you way less likely to get aggro and just enabling a few different things within the context of the game. For example, you can use it before a fight to get the jump on enemies, you can use it in the middle of the fight to disengage from enemies, or something that's especially good is using it to safely resurrect your teammates once they get downed. So when you die in this game, you fall to the ground, you crawl extremely slowly, and
Okay, so you do need to hit them quite a few times, at least. Okay, I thought it was just like, you know, you touch them and you revive them. That would have been really bad. But at least you have to get in some work.
a little circle appears above you.
But what's a little unfortunate there is there's not as much commitment to like attacking your teammate. Whereas, like, let's say the standard way of doing things is, you know, you get to them, then you have to activate whatever prompt, and then you have to expose yourself for the amount of time that the prompt activates, basically. So the trade-off is, are you sure you're safe here while activating this prompt? Whereas here it's like, you know, you attack and then, oh, okay, if the enemy comes, you just stop attacking, you dodge, you attack again. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same. Like, it's a way less commitment and definitely way easier. Even if you have to attack them quite a few times, there's no commitment. You can like attack him once, then dodge an attack him another time. You know what I mean?
Your head. This little circle is basically like a health bar that your teammates have to attack and deplete in order to resurrect you. The first time you're downed, you only have one of these purple bars, the second time you have two, and the third time you have three, meaning that every subsequent time you die, it's more risky for your teammates to try and resurrect you.
Okay, so there's more commitment if you keep dying. That's a good mechanic, though, because you definitely don't want to punish players from, like, let's say, abusing that mechanic, as in, like, you just go in there, face tank everything until you die, wait for your teammate to resurrect you, and then rinse and repeat, right? To dish out, like, as much damage as possible, like, disregarding dying altogether. But the fact that they have it, like, okay, you're gonna get punished. If you keep dying over and over, then it's gonna take a long time to resurrect, and maybe multiple teammates have to attack you at the same time to basically revive you in time. So I think that's a good thing, though, that they do it like that.
Because they have to stand there hitting you while avoiding aggro for quite a long time. And
Okay.
with some
That's basically what he's saying. Okay, that's good. So they actually did think about
of
that.
these bosses, avoiding aggro is not easy. These bosses will often be a 3-part fight where you just have them on you the entire time. So resurrecting your teammates is definitely a tricky thing to pull off sometimes.
That's
It's also
good.
something that takes the damage you deal into account. So the more damage you do, the faster you'll resurrect your teammates. And so now I think we should talk about how to make your character stronger, how to make you do more damage and take more damage and survive. Okay, so the footage they gave us is really quite good. It does a good job of showcasing things that are important to the game. But RP walking like this is not one of them. If you did this in game, your teammates will scream at you like, you don't have time to do this kind of thing. You are evaluating weapons and items and stats as fast as you can, because you also have to think
I like that. I like this little presentation that they introduce here.
about where to go next, and yeah, it's just crazy. So a big
The
part of
UI there is very interesting. I really like that.
have to think about where to go next, and yeah, it's just crazy. So a big part of skill expression is being able to look at a weapon and saying, okay, this suits my build. Okay, I'm
Ooh, and this UI here, that's way better than what they've done previously. Oh my god, like this, like just this menu part looks so clean. That's actually really good looking.
gonna work towards
I'm just like admiring the work of this UI designer who made this. That's actually pretty damn good.
this, or I'm gonna leave this.
Unlike Elden Ring, which Elden Ring there's an ugly fucking like like little shading there, like pure like brown gray that goes like half of the screen almost, which is extremely ugly. But this here is actually pretty well executed.
This one behind, or I'm gonna give this one to a teammate, that sort of thing. And a part of what makes this so much simpler than Elden Ring, but also so much more complex, is that yes, weapons have been simplified in the sense that they have one number associated with the damage they do, and
Oh, that's interesting. They have one number associated with the damage they do. What about damage type? Is there no more damage type?
it's quite clear. And also so much more complex is that yes, weapons have been simplified in the sense that they have one number associated with the damage they do.
That's casualized at its finest, though. Again, like a lot of mechanics there are basically like, let's make the game more simple to play in general. Maybe it's not a bad thing for the damage numbers, though. Like this sort of stuff is not necessarily bad.
And it's quite clear if they inflict a status effect like Scarlet Rot. It's obvious if you've played the base game which skill is tied to the weapon, but what makes this so much more complex is that every single piece of equipment now comes with passive buffs that affect your character even if the weapon isn't actually in your hand. So you have
So build making is basically collecting weapons. On the fly, of course.
6 weapon slots in this game, and you want to fill every single one of them because every weapon will confer a different passive buff that will affect the main weapon that you have in your hand. So say, for example, these 3 armaments drop for you. Which ones would you take with you?
So improve lightning damage negation, improve charge attacks, and improve lightning damage negation. So basically, having those two, you'd be much more resistant to lightning, and you can carry them. And then, you know, use... you'd probably want to use... you'd probably want to use the Tree Spear, though, because it has RKR. This one, though, with Crackblade, maybe you're going to do a lot of stagger damage by just spamming jump attacks, so you'd probably go with either one of these. Unless maybe your whole team does bleed damage, which is interesting because it just says bleed, it doesn't say how much bleed it's doing. So I really wonder how they're approaching the status here, right? Because there's no number associated with how much status. Like, does that mean that bleed daggers are basically better in every way than other weapon types? Because simplifying like that does introduce that question.
If you're playing a melee character, the Tree Spear might be great because it actually has a really good charge attack and it increases the damage that charge attacks do. So you might want to base your build more around a charge attack playstyle. Or if you have the Duchess on your team, you might want to grab the Bleed weapon because Bleed seems to synergize really well with the stopwatch ability that duplicates damage.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, that seems like the no-brainer play.
Able to spot these synergies in an instant and try to make your build on.
You say it's the same as base Elden Ring, you think? Then why did they remove that number, though? Because then that's just lack of information. Then we would have to go to like the fucking wiki page for Elden Ring base game to know like which weapon does how much bleed. That would be bad if that's the case.
On the fly was a really big part of what made this game so fun to me. Your
Let me
build
just
on being
rewind a
able
little
to
bit.
organize really well with the stopwatch ability that duplicates damage, being able to spot these synergies in an instant and try to make your build on the fly was a really big part of what made this game so fun to me. You should also be evaluating consumables, because you can only carry 4 stacks of any one consumable at any one time, and consumables are really good.
That they should have done something like that in Elden Ring, to be fair. Like only being able to carry like a certain stack of consumables, not a full arsenal of every possible consumables that exist. I think the limitation here is definitely a good thing.
Good now. Firebombs are now handheld nukes that can be thrown in midair, and weapon buffs can be applied to
That's interesting.
any weapon, and they're powerful, so bear that in mind. Another thing that's really important is, ideally, you'll have someone on your team
That's a really good looking map. Man, the UI here, like the UI is
who's
top
really
notch.
any weapon, and they're powerful, so bear that in mind. Another thing that's really important is, ideally, you'll have someone on your team who's really good at quickly evaluating where it will be best to go next. There are a lot of important landmarks in this game, and many of them will be recognizable across multiple sessions. For example, you see that black rise off to the right there? So if you solve the puzzle and make your way to the top, you'll get a choice of 3 armaments and or buffs to choose from, which usually is a reward that's exclusive to when you kill bosses in this game. So basically every landmark has a boss within it, but some have interesting things as well, like we're currently diving down.
Bro, we could have had this whole map as an Elden Ring DLC, man. How unfortunate is that?
To Kenneth Heights Castle, which showed up a few times for us in our run, and inside this room there was a map on the table, and when you interact with the map, it actually reveals points of interest that usually wouldn't be marked on the map.
It's the same Landgrave? Well, they changed a lot of things, like all the landmarks are different. I mean, it would have been a nice little change of pace to be able to play new stuff in Elden Ring. I'm just saying, you know, it's not a complaint or anything.
For example, the locations of these silver scarab beetles would show up, and whenever we defeated one of these, a talisman would drop. Each character has 2 talisman slots, and being able to loot a talisman usually was a really big power spike for one member of our team. And I don't have footage of it, but Kenneth Heights map also revealed the location of merchants on the map, and these merchants were always next to a smithing table. And
dude, I love how they made that character where one wing is broken and it's basically the side where you put your shield. That's actually pretty damn cool design.
they always sold one type of smithing stone, which would have allowed you to level up your weapon. This is probably a really important mechanic to interact with if you find
And that jump definitely looks a little janky though.
merchant, because weapons have different rarities as well, which is something I should have mentioned. There's a common level 1 rarity, there's a
Epic few T-posing miner. Let me see.
smithing were always next to a smithing table, and they always sold. Kenneth Heights map also revealed the location of merchants on the map, and these merchants were always next to a smithing table, and they always sold one type of smithing stone, which would have allowed you to level up your weapon. This
Yeah, I just noticed.
probably a really important mechanic to
That's
interact
funny.
with if you find a merchant, because weapons have different rarities as well, which is something I should have mentioned. There's a common level 1 rarity, there's a rare blue level 3 rarity, there's an epic purple level 9 rarity, and we only found 2 of these, but there is a legendary rarity as well that requires you to be level 12 to equip it.
Okay.
I'll admit there were runs where I was like, ah man, we didn't get any good loot that run, like we didn't find that many epics or legendaries, and that could be a bit frustrating. However, I suspect that the merchants and their smithing tables will be a way to consistently upgrade a weapon that might be common, but it might have a really good buff that you want, and so I think upgrading weapons could be a way to sort of smooth out the randomness of the game. At the end of every day, you face a major boss, so There were 4 different types we could face in this demo, and they were all very difficult, especially the ones that split into
Okay.
they were all very difficult, especially the ones that split into multiple versions of themselves or had multiple ads that you had to deal with, because that required everyone in your team to fulfill a role, and the strategy you use against these bosses will play a huge part in your success. For example, we had someone on our team who was not as familiar with Elden Ring.
Well, I mean, of course it's going to be hard if you have like a weak link like that. I love how he says they had someone on their team not familiar with Elden Ring. Like, this is so typical to invite fucking bozo journalists in there, like, to review the gameplay of the game before launch. Someone that was not even familiar with fucking Elden Ring. You know why they do that? Because that's their target audience.
For example, we had someone on our team who was not as familiar with Elden Ring.
So basically, when he says the boss are hard, take it with a grain of salt, because he had someone on their team not familiar with the game, I mean.
So they ended up taking on a tanking role where they kind of held up their shield and tried their best to keep aggro rather than dealing damage.
Tried their best to stay alive, I think he means.
And they did a great job of that. That worked really well because they could do something like distract.
I mean, to be fair here, Vaati is not going to throw that person under the rug and say, like, yeah, that guy was really useless. He really dragged the team down. I mean, he's not going to say that, even if it's actually true.
The demi-human.
Yeah, we had a scrub on the team, and it didn't go really well. Like, you know, like, you kind of need all 3 players to be doing some work, and, you know, it was difficult to carry this guy.
And Queen all by themselves, while me and a more competent player were able to DPS this demi-human swordsman down and then go back and help the tank with the one they were aggroing. There were strategies for every boss like this, and I really enjoyed coming up with ways to defeat these bosses on the fly and accounting for things that went wrong within the fight. So what you're seeing here is the end of day 1, where they've defeated the major boss, and now they get to claim a reward. Like many rewards in this game, it's a choice.
Increase sorcery and incantation duration by 30%. Poison and rot trigger continuous HP recovery. Interesting. Flask slowly restores HP. Interesting.
Between 3 different options. Sometimes it was a choice between permanent effects and buffs for your character, sometimes weapons, sometimes both, and again you have to make a really split-second decision on what
I just can't get over like how the UI looks so clean, man. I can't wait to see the actual UI for the game, if it's changed or anything.
Is best for you and your team. And then at the end of the day, the night rain recedes and you can go out and explore again, but bear in mind, I'm pretty sure everything you killed on day 1 stays dead on day 2, so it was important to keep progressing around the map and finding new places to explore.
That's a cool smog here. Or fog, I mean.
Eventually, everything culminates in this, your final fight against the chosen Night Lord that you set
The
out.
chosen... Bro, we have there's the chosen Night Lord, but we have Night Lord Mungus over here on this channel. He's just the ultimate Night Lord, you know what I mean? Night Lord Mungus.
When you left the Round Table Hold. In this case, our final boss was called Tricephalus, a 3-headed... In this case, our final boss was called Tricephalus, a 3...
Dude, why did they do that? Oh my god.
3-headed hound that periodically would split into 3 parts, 1 for each member of your group. It's in this boss fight and boss fights like this that you realize Nightreign really was designed for 3 people. Yes, they probably...
Yeah, that's like Tricephalus, and then there's 3 bosses. Like, why would you name them that way? I wonder if FromSoft does it on purpose. They probably do, but it's still funny that, you know, it's said like Vaati says it so seriously. That's just so funny to me.
Realize Nightreign really was designed for 3 people. That's one for each member. In this case, our final boss was called Tricephalus, a three-headed hound that periodically would split into three parts, one for each member of your group. It's in this boss fight and boss fights like this that you realize Nightreign really was designed for 3 people. Yes, they probably could have designed enemies so that they scaled with the amount of people in your party, but...
Yo, Pulpy, thank you so much for the 2 years, brother. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate that. Welcome back. I hope you're ready for Nightreign.
There's something to be said for...
Can't you also play it alone? Yes, you can.
Not compromising.
Either alone or 3 players. No 2 players from what we learned so far. Well, unless, you know, they came out with something recently.
On your boss design around that fact. You know, these bosses feel like they were designed to be taken on with 3 people, and everyone in your party is supposed to have a different role in these fights as a result. So, that's Nightreign. I mean, I could go on about all the different little things I've discovered, but I don't have footage for it right now, so I think I'll just give you my thoughts on the game. Obviously, somewhat biased. I run a From Software YouTube channel. You have to take what I say with a grain of salt, but
yeah, I mean, I like the full disclosure here, because I'll be honest with you guys, there's not a single one of these people that are invited to these events or like shared information like that that would throw From Software under the rug. That would be, quite frankly, a bit stupid. So yeah, you know, always take that stuff with a grain of salt.
I really did have so much fun playing this. In retrospect, I was a bit wrong about my analysis of the game previously, because previously a big point I mentioned was that, you know, Nightreign will allow you to get immersed in this ever-changing world and take in the scenery and just...
So I wonder if he's gonna say that. I thought there was going to be a bit of lore, and there's no lore.
enjoy like a first playthrough of Elden Ring again. This isn't that. Like, you don't have time to appreciate this world sometimes. Instead, that feeling is replaced with this rush to explore and get stronger and overcome difficulty, and when your build comes together just right and that allows you to kill even more bosses even faster and get even stronger, it's a great feeling. And over the course of our play session, you know, we finally had one run where everything came together perfectly. We got the items we wanted, we managed to execute our strategies perfectly, and we finally faced off against the final boss and managed to take it down. If you have a friend or two who are into Elden Ring as well, and you think you can all team up and take on this game together...
What he said there, the fact that we streamed this game and there's a lot of you guys in chat, I think this is going to carry this game like so hard. The fact that we're all going to come together to play this. Like, you know, even if I'm not in the lobby with you guys, just coming in together and being able to play together. Like, no matter what game you play, like, just being with friends like that, that's always a fun time. So, but that's not necessarily, like, about Nightreign, but just the fact that the game is, like, kind of made toward that, I think we are going to benefit from that just because we stream this, you know what I mean? Too bad you don't have a PS5. Well, I'm probably going to get this on PC, though, to be fair. And if it's not that bad, I'm going to get it for PS5 as well, because I can justify it because we're going to stream it. Hopefully it's as good as Vaati seems to think it is.
I think it's going to be
We'll
like
see.
one of the best co-op experiences you've ever had. Take on this game together. I think it's going to be like one of the best co-op experiences you've ever had.
Wow.
My main concerns with this game come from the fact that, you know, if you don't have someone else to play this with, will this game still be great played with randoms or played by yourself?
Right.
I'm not as sure of that. And I think come the network test in a couple of days, people aren't going to have that many friends to play with who also got into the network test, and so I think some of the feedback might be more negative because of that. But as it stands, everyone I know had a blast playing this together, especially side by side in the same room with other people.
Right.
It was just an unforgettable experience. The other thing I'm curious about is when the full game releases, how random will the maps be? In this demo build of the game, again, we could only play one of two maps, but we've kind of been led to believe that maps will be somewhat procedurally generated and that they'll stitch together different zones.
That would be good if they do that. That would be a good, like, band-aid solution to mixing it up a little bit.
And yeah, the demo had two maps seemingly that you could explore, and over the course of our session and over the course of the network test, when people play this, they're going to start figuring out these maps and understanding the best route through, and it will become familiar to them, which I don't think is the intended experience for Nightreign. I suspect in the full game, and I hope in the full game, maps are really, really randomized, and no two playthroughs are the same.
Well, that would be definitely a best case scenario if they do that, but I don't know if they will. He doesn't know either. Hopefully they do.
So that's definitely something I'm gonna...
AI generated map variation? No, it's just like, you know, procedural stuff that already exists. I mean, they already made procedural maps with Bloodborne dungeons, you know? Like, let's say compare the Elden Ring dungeons to like Bloodborne procedural dungeons. The outcome, like how you play these maps, is basically the same. The difference is you get tired of the fucking Elden Ring dungeons, whereas at least with Bloodborne, it's a different layout every time. You know what I mean? But like gameplay-wise, it's still pretty mediocre both ways, but at least with Bloodborne, you have the variety of like the layout being different.
Be looking for in the full release. Anyway, I hope this video helped you understand more about the game. I'll be playing the network test and recording our experiences, and I might make a video on that as well, so subscribe, stay tuned. Thank you to Bandai for flying me out and giving me this experience, and thank you for watching.
Bloodborne dungeons were seriously underrated. I don't know if they were underrated, but if you compare, let's say, Bloodborne dungeons to like handcrafted legacy dungeons, I mean, there's really no one in their right mind that would say, oh yeah, randomly generated Bloodborne dungeons were better than handcrafted legacy dungeons from like Elden Ring or any other Souls game, really. And that makes sense. But if you compare these Bloodborne dungeons to other dungeons, like Elden Ring dungeons, that obviously have been created procedurally, but that are basically static, like they were created by just like putting a bunch of rooms together without really much thought put into them. Well, at this point, you might as well have them be procedural, like generated differently on the fly to give some variation, is what I mean. Okay, well, that's the Vaati stuff. I mean, to be honest, I'm not really surprised by a lot of this stuff. I think the most surprising thing that I saw out of this is how crazy good looking that UI was. I feel like the UI here is just like a step above like every other game that FromSoft has ever made, really. I'm actually shocked by that. Like the UI looked absolutely amazing. At least the few things that we saw. Obviously, like you don't see the HUD itself, but surprisingly, that actually like that was very noticeable. I also heard that Iron Pineapple had probably like the most interesting vid, so we're gonna watch that as well. Let's see.
Recently, I got the chance to play Elden Ring Nightreign early at a hands-on preview event hosted in Vegas. In case you missed it, Nightreign is the next game From Software is releasing, and according to them, it's a quote, co-op action survival game. What is it really? It's essentially Elden Ring remixed into an action roguelike for 3 players, where each run sees you fighting enemies and collecting loot in a shrinking Fortnite-esque circle. When the circle fully shrinks, you're forced into a nighttime boss fight. The game has you fighting Elden Ring enemies and bosses, but you'll also encounter bosses from past Dark Souls games occasionally too, like the Nameless King. If you make it to day 3, you get to fight one of the 8 Night Lord final bosses, and winning here equals a successful run. I was unfortunately not allowed to record my own footage at the event.
One thing that I'm thinking right now is like, you know, eight bosses total. Like how many different bosses does the actual Elden Ring game have, you know? There's a lot of bosses. I wonder if it's going to get repetitive very quickly. If it's not like, if the final bosses are really only between 8. Whereas, you know, the pool of bosses that they could have used is a lot larger. I don't know. It seems like this could actually get repetitive a lot quicker than I initially thought, though.
but I was given 17 minutes of B-roll, showcasing a good chunk of the experience.
You can choose them, by the way, the final bosses. Yeah, that's a bit strange. I thought it would be like randomly chosen. I don't know.
Now, I do have a lot of opinions about my time.
Some will grind all of them out in a day. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It seems like, you know, 8. It's like, technically speaking, if all your runs go well, you could probably like beat the game in 8-9 hours. Maybe not 8 because of like downtime and a bunch of shit, but let's say like 9 hours, like one day of gaming, maybe you could clear all of them. Like what after? Like, is it getting repetitive after that? I don't know.
Time playing the game, but first let's go over all the footage in sequential order, as I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what to expect from the gameplay loop. I'll interject with my thoughts along the way, and save some of my bigger opinions and critiques for the end. Each run begins with a short cutscene of your chosen Nightfarers walking toward a cliff before running to catch a lift from a spectral...
Each day it's 15 minutes? Oh, well, I thought each like a run, like successful run from start to finish, I thought it was 30 minutes. Like, I thought each successful run was 30 minutes, but is it like 45 minutes then? Well, either way, that doesn't really change much.
Hawk. There will be 8 characters to choose from in the full game, but there are only 4 in the demo, and I'll talk about what each one can do as they appear. Next, you're thrust into the game with an aerial view of the map as you glide down on your Hawk, kind of like a Fortnite glider, though you don't have...
Also, I don't know if Vaati mentions it and I didn't notice it, but what happens if your entire team wipes out? Do you just get back to the side of grace? Or is it game over? Like, what happens then? Like, if your entire team wipes, if you all die, is the game over? I hope it is, because if you get back to a side of grace, it's like, you know, game over? Okay, that's good.
Have control over where you get to land. The game forces you to drop off in the spot it's chosen near the edge of the map. It's pretty odd that you can't choose where to land or influence the flight of the bird, because I think it'd be pretty fun to have more agency over where to start. But hey, that's just me. Also, the text...
Dying before, then you lose 1 level and respawn. If you're, like, what I mean, Bean, is not like 1 player dying, but what if your entire team wipes? Well, I mean, if it's only 1 player dying, I assume that it would be the same. Because if you respawn right away, then... yeah. I guess that might not be as challenging as I thought then. If, like, dying is, like, unconsequential like that. If you just like reset at the nearest side of grace, you lose 1 level, no biggie, you keep going.
Day 1 pops up on the screen because, you guessed it, it's day 1. As I already mentioned, the game is split into 3 days, where you explore during...
Pineapple said everyone dying is game over. Okay, I hope that's true though. I hope that's good. I hope it's the case, because otherwise it feels like it takes away a lot of punishment from being unsuccessful or dying, because you could technically just die and go back over and then win again. You know, oh, we failed, but we can get a second chance.
day and fight a boss
He said only during the final boss. Okay.
at night.
Yeah, I don't know.
As I already mentioned, the game is split into 3 days, where you explore during the day and fight a boss at night. Each day is somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes long. I didn't time it, but I'm pretty sure.
Wait, so how many days?
1. As I already mentioned, the game is split into 3 days, where you explore during the
So it is 45 minutes. 3 days of 15 minutes. Okay, it is 45.
day and fight a boss at night. Each day is somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes long. I didn't
10 to 15. Okay, so technically 30 to 45 minutes per game.
time it, but I'm pretty sure it's within that range. Upon landing, you have a few different choices on where to go, but these players chose to go after the nearest enemy camp, something my group often did as well. This also gives us our first look at Wilder, the Strength Dexterity Knight, and his grapple hook ability. As you can see, it pulls small enemies closer, but when used on larger ones, Wilder's launch toward them instead. Each character has one unique ability like this that's on a short cooldown. There's normally a big icon at the bottom of the screen that displays the ability and lets you know when it's available to use. Also, this is pointing out the obvious, but it's worth mentioning. This combat is literally Elden Ring. Like the animations, the enemies you're fighting, this is Elden Ring. Ultimately, this makes Nightreign feel like an ambitious fan mod for Elden Ring as opposed to a standalone product. And I don't mean that necessarily as a bad thing, but I do feel compelled to point this out because it's pretty core to the experience. After clearing the camp, the group runs toward the nearest site of grace.
I think everyone expected that though at this point. Like if you've made it this far, like following what the game is doing, you already knew that this was basically like a recycled combat from Elden Ring almost directly. I mean, it is directly from Elden Ring, but with a few modifications like he's mentioning.
This showcases the new Super Sprint, which is basically the normal sprint at double speed. This is mostly used for traversal because the map is big and Torrent's on vacation. You can also use it during combat, but it's tough to pull off because it'll drain your entire stamina bar almost instantly. Anyway, they run up to the site of grace to replenish their healing flask and level up. You start each run with 3 flasks, and each site of grace will refill them all. Sites of Grace are also where you can level up using the runes you acquire from enemies and bosses, just like Elden Ring. However, unlike Elden Ring, there isn't a way to pick and choose stats. Instead, you just click the big level up button, and you'll...
One thing that I just thought of, you know, since this is basically like everything recycled from Elden Ring, like pretty much nearly all the mechanics are going to be based on what Elden Ring is doing. You know, guys, you know, you play Elden Ring once, sometimes you get like near an enemy or something, and you'll basically engage like combat mode, or like an enemy will spot you, attack you, and you'll engage combat mode. What if combat mode was not engaged with your teammates? They just keep on sprinting, but since your stamina bar depletes like right away, engaging in combat or being like spotted by an enemy makes it so that you can't catch up to your friends anymore. I could see that.
You'll simply be stronger with extra damage, health, and FP. I'm a little mixed on this, as I think it's a missed opportunity to provide the player with a choice on health and FP. Instead, you just click the big level up button. However, unlike Elden Ring, there isn't a way to pick and choose stats. Instead, you just click the big level up button, and you'll simply be stronger with extra damage, health, and FP.
You pick the big level up button, so there is no build making as far as stat allocation is concerned. Like we thought, I mean, like what PC Gamer actually were describing in their article back when the game was first announced. So no surprise there.
I'm a little mixed on this, as I think it's a missed opportunity to provide the player with a choice on how to build their character.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Pineapple there, for sure. It's a missed opportunity. There's no other way to put it, especially when it was already in place in their template, Elden Ring.
But it does fit the theme of the game, with them wanting to keep things quick and streamlined. So maybe it's for the best.
Yeah, simplifying things is definitely the way they approach this. Like, they simplified a lot of stuff, it seems.
Regardless, leveling up is important, as the boost in damage from level 1 to level 2 is quite noticeable. More damage means enemies die faster, and in this game, speed is everything. Next, we see the player attack a group of demi-humans, and they do this by throwing a firebomb. So yes, consumables such as firebombs are a thing in Nightreign, and you begin each run with 4 inventory slots to hold different types of consumables. You can also see that the player broke some glowing crates, which dropped additional consumables for them to
Builds let bad players fail, so they can't have that.
pick up. Between your inventory being very limited and finding plenty of extra consumables, you're heavily encouraged to use these whenever.
Also, each slot can't hold large stacks. For example, 2 firebombs take up a whole slot. So if you wanted to hold more than 2 firebombs, you'd take up another slot. I see. Okay, that's actually very limiting. That's interesting.
You have a chance. After this, the group encounters a golem, and I believe it counts as a mini-boss. Mini-bosses are scattered across the map, and you'll know you're fighting one because a boss health bar will appear at the bottom of the screen. Upon defeat, the mini-boss will drop a purple...
No footage of the soul from the golem, but it basically looks like this footage is from defeating the first main boss. Okay. Oh, it basically looks like this. This footage is from defeating the first main boss.
Soul, and this rewards each player with the choice between 3 upgrades, ranging from a new weapon to a permanent passive boost. Examples of the passives I saw were a slight increase to stamina regen or a slight increase to damage reduction. And to be clear, all 3 players get their own reward from the 1 purple soul. This next clip showcases the new wall climbing mechanic. When you press jump while sprinting toward a wall, your character will automatically run up the wall and then...
Actually, no need to sprint to climb things. You just like walk up to something and jump.
New wall climbing mechanic. When you press jump while sprinting toward a wall, your character will...
Man, that jump looks so jank though. It looks really bad. I can't get it over it.
The new wall climbing mechanic.
Sorry, I can't.
Press jump while
I can't get over it. I mean,
wall, your character will automatically run up the wall and...
I just look at
wall
that.
Climbing mechanic. When you press jump while sprinting toward a wall, your character will automatically run up the wall and then mantle over the ledge. This is sick. It adds an additional layer of verticality to the map, and it can be fun figuring out how to get from point A to point B, since sometimes you'll have to use the wall climb in slightly creative ways. At the top of this church, the player finds some loot on a body and inside a box. Important to note is that all loot you find like this is classified as community loot, meaning that every member of the team can see it, but only one person can take each item. This is also our first look at the difference.
Important to know though.
Important to note is that all loot you find like this is classified as community loot, meaning that every member of the team...
So you get to fight over like what you're picking. Mungus is gonna steal your gear, guys.
can see it, but only one person can take each item. This is also our first look at the different armaments you can find. Each weapon and shield has a built-in Ash of War, and each spellcasting catalyst has 2 different spells. So yes, in this game, the spells you cast are attached directly to the catalyst. Each armament also comes with a built-in passive effect, such as extra damage on combo finishers, additional item discovery, or HP restoration upon attacks.
Yeah, not a game to play with randoms. That is true though. Like, this might not be a big deal when you're playing with people you know, but playing with randoms, there's definitely a sort of like competition aspect to it, just because you don't really share gear together. So that's definitely not in the spirit of working together to defeat stuff, that's for sure.
These are mostly small background bonuses, but what's interesting is that each of these passive effects applies to your character even if the armament isn't actively
It's a problem even with friends, yeah. But with friends, it's funny though.
being used. As long as it's equipped, you get the effect. This means that you always want to have 6 armaments equipped, especially because equip load isn't something you need to worry about in this game. You'll always be fast rolling. This is also our first look at blue colored loot. This indicates that it's more rare, and the rarity goes from white to blue to purple to orange. Next, we catch a glimpse of the map screen, and this should give you a better idea of the scope of each run. The map itself is an island, and on the edge, you can see the Fortnite circle closing in. Just like Fortnite, instead of constantly getting smaller, there are intervals where it doesn't move at all. I won't go over all the icons on the map, but basically, these show you where most of the points of interest are, like enemy camps or fortresses. You can then pin on the map where you want to go, which is useful because the other players will be able to see your pin and know where you're going. Also worth noting is that some things are hidden on the map, so it's possible you'll find something good even if it's not marked from the start. Between this and the marked points of interest, you probably won't have time to do everything, so you have to make quick decisions on where to go and what to skip. Next, we see Wilder use his grapple hook to get a little extra speed when running around. It's tough to see here, but this use case is also relevant during fights. Instead of grappling the boss, it might be worth grappling the ground to reposition. We then see Wilder take on another mini-boss, the Leonine Misbegotten, and he initiates the fight with a big fire explosion. This is Wilder's ultimate ability, so unlike the grapple hook, which is on a short cooldown, it's usually a minute or 2 between uses of the ultimate, and I believe dealing damage increases the speed it fills up.
A minute or 2, that's a long time actually. Like a minute cooldown when the day's like, let's say 2 minutes cooldown, and the day is like 15 to 10 minutes, like you basically only get to, like if the day is like 10 minutes and your cooldown is 2 minutes, well, that's only 5 use case, you know, that's not a lot.
Up. Wilder then lands a critical hit, and this is a good time to point out that some of the weapon animations have been changed. So the Greatsword moveset, for example,
and if you fight a boss, like chances are maybe some boss fights might not even last, especially like field bosses like that, might not even last 2 minutes.
Is a bit different. It feels a little faster and more aggressive, which is well suited for the faster pace of Nightreign. This fight also gives some of the weapon animations have been changed. So the Greatsword moveset, for example, is a bit different. It feels a little faster and more aggressive, which is well suited for the faster.
I wonder if Iron Pineapple says that the weapon animation feels faster because he's not been there since a long time for Elden Ring and hasn't been there for the patches either. So I wonder if he says that because he has not played Elden Ring in a while and wasn't there when they buffed like a lot of weapons, and maybe they're using that for Nightreign. I don't know, or they're actually faster than Elden Ring right now.
For example, is a bit different. It feels a little faster and more aggressive, which is well suited for the faster pace of Nightreign. This fight also gives us a look at Wilder's unique passive ability, something each character has. Once per run, you can cheat death. The first time you get hit by an attack that would kill you, there's a flash of white followed by a quick dodge. The first time it happened, I thought it was some sort of perfect block, but no, it's Wilder surviving an attack he shouldn't have. Finally, Wilder's group shows up. But, oh no, one of his teammates goes down. So in Nightreign, instead of dying immediately, you enter a down state where you can crawl around. Not to keep bringing up Fortnite, but it's like Fortnite. However, unlike Fortnite, to revive your teammate, you actually want to attack them. After dealing enough damage, they pop right back up. The HUD for reviving looks something like this in-game. A ring split into 3 equal sections above your ally's head. This ring represents how much damage you need to deal to bring your friend back. The first time they go down, only one section needs to be depleted, but each subsequent death adds another section, so it gets tougher and tougher to keep reviving. I think this may reset if you don't get down for a while though. You have 15 seconds to get revived, and if your friends fail to get you, you'll lose a level and respawn at the last site of grace you touched.
That's a very minor penalty. Like if you die, you lose a level and go back to the last grace. That's very minor. That's extremely small penalty.
Won't end a run, but it's still a pretty brutal punishment given how important levels are. Next, we have some footage of another Nightfarer, the Guardian. This bird person is the tank of the cast, with the most HP and a more defensive playstyle. Their active ability is a whirlwind that knocks small enemies up and staggers big enemies. They also have a special defensive stance they can enter, which seems to significantly decrease the stamina you lose when blocking attacks. This stance is their unique passive trait though, and not an
What if the Grace is placed that's close to the damaging circle? I hope that's the case. I hope that when you die and you spawn, you're basically outside of the circle and you just die again. That would be so fucking... That would be so typical of From Software. I'd love to see that.
ability on cooldown, so you can use it whenever you want. Most importantly though, they have a sick-ass dive bomb ultimate that lets them crash down for massive damage. This also showcases one of the best things about the revive mechanic. You can simultaneously hit enemies while reviving your teammates, and the dive bomb is probably the best example of why that's useful. They don't show it here, but if you keep holding down the ultimate button after landing your dive bomb, you remain crouched down with your weapon in the ground, and this provides a defensive buff to yourself and nearby allies for up to 10 seconds if you keep holding it.
That's interesting.
I also think you're immune to staggers and take heavily reduced damage while holding this stance. The next clip shows off the Fortnite circle. It takes the form of a blue ring of fire. If you find yourself outside the circle, you slowly take damage over time. Believe it or not, as much as everyone, myself included, keeps joking about the Fortnite comparisons, I think the time pressure this circle adds is one of the more compelling parts of the gameplay loop.
Of course, it's one of the most compelling things. Like, people love to shit on Battle Royale games, but they're mostly super fun. I used to play a lot of PUBG with my friends, my Rainbow Six friends, and it was a blast, honestly. Like, it was a blast playing that. Like, casuals like to joke a lot about Battle Royales, but Battle Royale games that I've played are extremely fun.
Loop. Basically, it encourages you to play efficiently. You don't just want to clear the camp full of enemies, you want to do it fast. And then it makes the moments in between fights interesting too, because you gotta make quick decisions on where to go and how to get there. This is fun, and pretty distinct from playing Elden Ring. Speaking of how to get places, one way to do that is by making use of slipstreams. These function pretty much identically to Spirit Springs in Elden Ring, and they allow you to super jump into the air. These were fun in Elden Ring, and they're still fun here. And it's cool how you can sometimes use them to reach the top of structures they might not have been intended for. Up ahead, the group finds a Church of America, and if you collect the item inside, it upgrades the maximum usage for healing flask by 1. Every church like this will have this upgrade, so you can always plan ahead and stop at 1. Next, the group finds a scarab to kill. This is an example of one of the many useful things you can find that might not be marked on the map.
I don't know if you guys noticed, he used this hook to like bring it closer.
This is an example of one of the many useful things you can find
that's funny. That's
that
cool.
might not be marked on the map. These guys always drop a talisman you can equip, and these talismans seem
You wonder which version of Elden Ring was used for development? Maybe some bugs are back? Oh yeah. That's most definitely possible, because I really doubt that the last version of is the version they used. I really doubt that. So yeah, there's probably a lot of bugs coming back in there for sure.
seem to function identically to how they do in Elden Ring. The passive boost they give can sometimes be substantial. We then have some more camp clearing gameplay, though these enemies are tougher than the ones at the start. This clip also gives us a better look at the Guardian's whirlwind move and how it can knock enemies up. One significant change from Elden Ring is how enemies no longer get periods of invincibility when knocked down, and this is especially useful for moves like the whirlwind attack if your teammates follow up. Also, notice how
Oh wow, so they're vulnerable on the floor like that? I like that. That's really cool.
the magic sword
Yeah, hard swapping is gone. Yeah, unfortunately we knew that already from previous info.
of carrying phalanx appear over
Estus canceling could still be in Nightreign, yeah. It's gonna be worth testing.
Wilder's head without him casting a spell.
Or pivot canceling in general, actually.
I believe this is an example of a passive upgrade he got from a mini-boss. The way this one works is that every 30 seconds or so, these swords will appear over your head for free damage. Next, we get another grapple shot clip. And yes, it can be used to break the guard of an enemy using a shield. The group then finds an underground passage leading to a treasure room, and this gives us another look at the loot system. Once again, this is community loot, and the players must share. You can also see that there are level requirements attached to weapons. Blue is level 3, purple is level 9, and orange is level 12. Remember, there aren't stat requirements like Elden Ring, and you just have one overall level. If you find a spectral tree, you can summon a spectral hawk to carry you across the map. These follow set paths, and the little floating spirits show you the general direction it'll take you. You can also see the path it'll take you on the map screen. What's cool about these spectral hawks, as opposed to the ones at the start of the match, is that you're given a little control in steering them, and when you want to land, you have more freedom on where exactly you want to touch down. This is also our first look at the third character, the the Duchess. She's basically the nimble rogue archetype of the group. The players also find a treasure map on a desk in this fort, and this reveals the locations of more points of interest on the map. Also, this location is literally fort height from Elden Ring, like 1-to-1 copy paste. Not every location is like this, but some of them are, and it's incredibly trippy seeing iconic areas like the Gatefront ruins dropped into this remixed version of Limgrave. I'm not too bothered by this, but this is another example of ripping things straight off Elden Ring, and it plays a big role in this feeling like a well-made fan mod as opposed to a standalone game. Next, we get some proper Duchess game.
I feel like Iron Pineapple is always trying to be like, you know, politically correct, but at the same time, like low key, just a little roast, just a little bit.
Gameplay, and a look at her ability, Restage. This replays the damage an enemy or boss just took over the past 2 seconds, and as you can see, it's especially impactful when it's paired with something like Wilder's ultimate. For only being on a short cooldown, this is easily the strongest ability in the game. It's also a great example of co-op
Easily the strongest ability in the game. I haven't played it, and just from the sound of it, it definitely sounded like it. I feel validated to hear Iron Pineapple say that, because it does look and sound absolutely overpowered.
Only being on a short cooldown, this is easily the strongest ability in the game. It's also a great example of co-op synergy and interactivity that usually isn't present in other FromSoft games. This clip also shows an important change to critical hits. In Elden Ring, bosses and enemies are immune to damage from teammates for the duration of someone landing.
Because, you know, if you're trying to beat the game, like, optimally, that would probably make it so that once you become, like, good enough, let's say, like, speedrunners, right? Like, let's say you have 3 Geno Machinos with a year of experience of Nightreign. All 3 Geno Machinos are all gonna pick the Duchess, and there's not going to be like any character synergy maybe, and the play is just going to be like grab bleed weapons and whatever, and like all 3 Genos are going to try to time a bleed, all activate their super, and then all bleed again, all activate their super, and like smoke bosses like that, like stupidly fast. I could see that.
Landing a critical hit. But in Nightreign, that's no longer a restriction. However, I think bosses might take reduced damage from other hits during this window, so that's not too overpowered. One last thing to note about this clip, the Duchess's passive gives her a unique quick-step Bloodborne dodge that's noticeably faster than the other dodges. She also gets a cool little backflip if you dodge backwards twice. Check out this dagger moveset, by the way. This is much different than Elden Ring and way faster. Definitely a fan of this change, and I can vouch that it feels great to use. Next, we get to see the Duchess's ultimate, which applies invisibility to herself and the rest of the group. This is obviously useful when sneaking up on enemies, but I also found it useful even in the middle of a boss fight, because attacking doesn't seem to break stealth. You can still get hit, but yeah, it has its uses. Finally, we get to see the 4th character, the Recluse, aka the Spellcaster Witch. Big fan of her design, by the way. And I already know this is going to be Zully's main. Like any good spellcaster, the first thing she does is jump off a cliff, and this demonstrates another cool change to Nightreign: no fall damage. The group then approaches an Everjail. To open it up, you'd find a stone sword key and then use it on the nearby stone imps. This then unlocks the boss fight. Next, we'd a look at the Recluse's unique ability, Magic Cocktail, and it's probably the coolest ability in the game, but it's weirdly complicated, so buckle up for a long explanation. So when you hit an enemy with a spell, they get marked by the corresponding element. The 4 elements are Magic, Fire, Lightning, and Holy, and in this clip, the enemy gets marked with Magic. Then, when you use her ability, it sucks out the elemental mark. In addition to restoring FP, this also fills in one of the 3 circles on the ability icon with the element you just sucked up. You repeat this 2 more times until all 3 circles are filled up, at which point using it a 4th time will expend the elemental icons and cast a special spell. Now here's the crazy part. The Magic Cocktail spell is unique and depends on the combination of elements you absorbed. So like, Magic 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 is different than Magic Magic Fire is different than Magic Fire Lightning. Since there are 4 different elements, this results in 14 different potential spells you can
Mage people love that sort of stuff. They love it.
cast baked into just one ability, and you kind of have to remember them because they have different ranges and uses. Hell, some of them don't even deal damage. Fire Holy, for example, creates a healing aura for yourself and nearby teammates. But the fun doesn't end there. Not only can you suck elemental marks out of enemies from the spells you cast, you can also
Well, the fun doesn't end there. God damn.
suck them out of elemental damage your teammates deal. For example, here Wilder uses a fire attack on the boss. This applies the fire mark, and the Recluse is able to suck the fire right out. And guess what? The damage your teammates take also counts. So if a teammate gets hit by a fire attack, you can lock onto them and suck it out the same way you would for an enemy. So yeah, this kind of kicks ass, and it's super fun seeing a needlessly complex move put into a game like this. The Recluse also has a pretty useful ultimate. It's called Song of the Blood Soul, and it marks all nearby enemies with a blood icon. Hitting a marked enemy will restore HP and FP, and your teammates can hit them too for the same effect. Lastly, the Recluse has a unique dodge animation where she floats around. I like how elegant it is, and I feel like it perfectly fits her design. Next up, we see the group group running through some mines, and shout out to FromSoft for sending us all this hand-picked footage, yet leaving in a T-posing miner. No hate, genuinely funny that slipped through. Anyway, yeah, you can
They don't even watch the fucking stuff they send. That's funny.
find mines like this during runs, but when I was playing, I felt like these were too out of the way to be worth it given the time pressure. Plus, I didn't find anything super useful inside.
For those who still think that From Software tests their game, they don't even rewatch the fucking clips they send for marketing. At least for this game.
Maybe they'll change though, or maybe I missed something. We then get a look at a camp full of flame chariots. When I was playing with my group, we made the mistake of heading to this camp at the very start. This is not a level 1 area. These guys are tough. If only there was a way to reach the weak spot on the top of their head. Oh wait, you can
Yo, Mozzarella Lord, thank you so much for the 30 months, bro. Welcome back.
use the new wall climbing. If only there was a way to reach the weak spot on the top of their head. Oh wait, you can use the new wall climbing ability to jump up and hit it for free. I wish I was aware of this during my play session, but hey, now we both know. Next, we see the group take on a dragon boss fight. Not much to say here, as we've seen most of this stuff already, but pay attention to the time of day. As it slowly changes to nighttime, that's your cue that you should start wrapping up whatever you're doing, because the circle begins to rapidly shrink at this point. You can see the circle closing in as they finish off the dragon. From here, what you want to do is look for the floating golden tree in the sky, as that's the point where the circle will close in. Eventually, the ring of fire reaches its smallest size, and essentially forms an arena. This is where you'll fight the first major boss. Before
And this is where you'll get to fight each other, and whoever survives get to fight the last boss. And then people who died get to get sent back to the main menu.
the boss fight, a small group of enemies will spawn in. This serves as both a warm-up for the fight and a teaser for which boss you're about to see. In this case, it's a pack of demi-humans. So fittingly, the boss fight is a demi-human queen and a demi-human swordsman. Something I appreciate about Nightreign is that these fights seem specifically designed for multiplayer, something we don't typically see in FromSoft games. In this case, it's due to there being 2 bosses at once, but I also encountered other bosses that are better examples of this. One of those bosses was the centipede demon from Dark Souls 1. During the fight, you can chop off its centipede limbs, but this forms an additional hazard as the severed limb keeps fighting. This is perfect for a group battle. Also, in case you're curious, its moveset seemed to modify from Dark Souls, so it wasn't like FromSoft just ported the boss into Elden Ring without making changes. I don't know exactly what those changes were, but I could tell that it felt different than Dark Souls. Another modified nighttime boss we encountered was Morgott. He was mostly similar to his appearance in Elden Ring, but he had a few new moves, including this insane AoE blood slash that would hit the whole group and nearly one-shot us. He also had new dagger throwing combos, and just seemed more aggressive overall. If FromSoft is going to rely on reusing bosses, I appreciate that these changes make it feel new-ish and suited for co-op. It's a shame they didn't seem to make any meaningful changes to the demi-human boss fight, but oh well. Anyway, after completing the fight, you get the message Night Repulsed. The boss also drops a purple soul, and upon interacting with it, you get a choice between 3 different upgrades for your character. This is basically how it works when killing mini-bosses too, but the upgrade from this main boss is more substantial. Sometimes these upgrades operate purely in the background, like extra spell duration, but my group occasionally encountered some more interesting upgrades. One time, one of my teammates got an upgrade that created lightning bolts whenever he dodged. Another one he found cast fireballs whenever he walked. And I do mean walked. Like, slightly tilting the left stick was the only way to trigger it. While the walking one wasn't super useful, both of these upgrades were cool because they weren't just background percentage buffs to stats. They were noticeable abilities that had the potential to shift our playstyle, at least a little bit. After everyone chooses an upgrade, fog rolls in and the Ring of Fire fully recedes. From there, Day 2 begins, and you get to continue exploring the map to get stronger before Night 2. Worth noting is that enemies and bosses defeated during Day 1 don't respawn, so it's a good idea to keep track of where you've already been. So yeah, the gameplay loop you've seen repeats for Day 2.
I wonder if, just watching this, I'm thinking, what will happen to, like, randoms? Will they all go in different direction and just meet at the end of the day for, like, one quote-unquote co-op final boss fight? Like, if you get to queue up with random people, like, what is it going to be like? Like, is everyone just going to go their way? Or are you going to just try to follow someone and you're going to fight for the loot and compete for the loot? And everyone will die. Yeah, you die on your own, lose a level, etc., etc. I don't know.
And if you survive the Night 2 boss, you're immediately taken to the Night Lord on Day 3. As such, Day 3 consists of just this boss fight with no exploration phase. You progress to Day 3 by walking along a pathway to a door that reminds me a lot of the area and door at the end of Shadow of the Earth.
And even, let's just say, even played optimally, right? What if the optimal way to approach this is to just all go your separate way and all get to benefit from a choice of like 3 loot because you're not competing for your loot with teammates? Like, will this be the way to play it, and you just basically meet up at the end to fight the final boss, so it's not as much of a co-op experience? I don't know. That actually sounds like it might actually be optimal once you are good enough. Like, once your full team is good enough to hold your own, that sounds like it might actually be the optimal strat, especially if you all share runes, right? So, like, if I kill an enemy over there, you kill an enemy over there, and I get the runes from your kill over there, here, we basically get to benefit from killing, like, more camps. I don't know.
The Night Lord of the demo was Gladius, a three-headed dog monster that swings around a giant sword on a chain. This guy is no joke. Also, for those of you who haven't played all the Soulsborne games, this is in fact the first boss that's completely unique to Nightreign, and I suspect the other Night Lords will be completely new as well. This guy also has a pretty devastating grab attack, so I recommend not getting hit by it. During the fight, one of Wilder's teammates goes down, and here they showcase the ability to revive teammates with ranged weapons like bows. This is surprisingly useful, and it might be worth holding on to your ranged weapon just for situations like this.
Oh yeah, so everyone's invisible, so the boss just de-aggroes completely. Damn, that Duchesse is going to be like so much stronger just than every other character, just because of that. It does the most damage and has the strongest defensive ability too. That's kind of crazy.
Speaking of ranged weapons, you don't have to worry about ammo in this game. It's unlimited. Around the halfway point, the boss explodes into 3 fireballs and then reforms as 3 separate dogs. This is probably the toughest part of the fight, and I think the best strategy is to try to take on each of them one by one. But when I talked to Vaati after the event, he told me he just ran away until they reformed into one body. So that might be an even better strat, even if it's boring. Either way, this is Nightrein's best example so far of a boss designed for 3 people.
So Vaati ran away until they reformed back into one body. Interesting. I thought with the speed that this game had that it would be easier to run away, but with this higher like stam that it takes to keep sprinting while in combat, maybe not anymore. But if he managed to like run away until they reformed, I'm actually curious now.
People, and I hope the rest of the Night Lords have similar co-op mechanics. And then win or lose, that's the end of the run. Okay, that's all the footage I got, but there are still a few things they didn't include footage of that I think are worth mentioning. First, you can find spectral merchants across the map. Merchants sell a variety of consumables and weapons, but given how important leveling is, we often didn't have enough runes to spare. Like, for example, they would sometimes sell a legendary weapon for 40,000 runes, which, for this game, is quite a bit. They also seem to always sell a pouch that gives you 1 extra consumable slot for the rest of the run. Next to each merchant is an anvil, which you can use to upgrade your weapons. To upgrade a weapon, you need to find a smithing stone of the corresponding rarity, and then upon using it, it levels up your weapon to the next tier. So for example, a blue weapon would turn into a purple weapon. This also means that it's technically possible to level up a white weapon all the way to orange. I don't think the weapon itself changes
That's nice.
during this upgrade process, aside from just getting extra damage. Also worth noting is that non-combat consumables like smithing stones or stone sword keys take up inventory space, so they might get in the way of all those fire bombs you want to carry. When exploring, you can find plants like roa fruit scattered around sometimes. In Elden Ring, this is a crafting material, but that's not a thing in Nightreign, so instead they just restore a bit of health right when you pick them up. There are similar blue plants that restore FP too. There are also mage towers just like Elden Ring. You know the ones with the little puzzles where you gotta find the spectral turtles? Those are here too. Though when we found one, we kind of just hit the statue at the front and it opened up immediately. So it's unclear to me if there's more to unlocking them in the full game. But yeah, they have loot inside. Another thing you can sometimes find is a glowing red body on the ground, which is the location that someone else failed to run. If you interact with the body, some loot pops out, and I assume it corresponds with whatever weapons they had at the time they died. Sometimes you'll come across weird hazards during your runs. One time, my group found a big purple bubble floating across the sky, and when we approached it, a swarm of giant ants poured out. I don't totally remember how this played out, but I think we got a mini boss reward after defeating them. You can also get invaded by bosses sometimes.
You can get invaded by bosses sometimes. Oh boy, oh boy.
Sadly didn't happen to my group, but I was talking with the others who had Margit invade them out of nowhere.
Casual friendly invasions.
What's cool about this is that can happen at inconvenient times.
What's cool about this is you don't have to feel the shame of getting defeated by a real human person. You only get defeated by an AI, so you don't get to feel any sort of, you don't get to feel any bad feelings, right? Because once you get killed by another person, it just feels like you want to quit the game and you want to disconnect right away. But you don't get that feeling when it's the AI that kills you instead.
Like when you're fighting
So I love that they thought about that.
a big group of enemies or another boss. Do you deal with it? Do you
Fucking scrubs, dude.
Run away? Do you reposition to a better location? All of these are interesting questions that result in some fun emergent gameplay. Stuff like this has the potential to be the defining moment of a run, where things go off the rails in a fun and memorable way. In theory, this is one of my favorite features in the whole game. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a maximum range for receiving runes from killed enemies. You can see an example of this in the first clip of the...
Wow, that answers one of the thing we just mentioned. Check. Let's just replay that.
Memorable way. In theory, this is one of my favorite features in the whole game. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a maximum range for receiving runes from killed enemies. You can...
So that just confirms what we theorized just a few minutes ago, that the optimal way to play this would basically be to go your separate ways, all clear different camps to all benefit from each other's rune. Which is a bit unfortunate because it defeats the purpose of playing together, you know?
You can see an example of this in the first clip of the Duchess, where she receives runes from her teammates killing enemies all the way over at the fort. This is interesting to me because it leaves the door open for strategies where you might want to split up. Like, imagine splitting up and clearing 3 camps at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That might be faster than doing it together. However, one reason not to do this is because of how shared rewards for mini-bosses work. Killing a mini-boss gives each player their own reward, but only if they...
Okay, so you basically want to group up for bosses in general. Like, for every boss you want to group up. That's basically it. So everyone goes their separate way. So basically the optimal strat is everyone goes their separate way to clear camps. Once someone finds a mini boss, everyone converge there to get the benefit from the loot. And the first person fighting it would probably start engaging before people get there. So I guess you'd get there sometimes just to grab the loot and you keep going.
approach the purple soul that it leaves behind. We also found a reinforced chest, which functioned in a similar way and let each player claim a reward from it separately. Another tip, normally when you get downed, your teammates only have 15 seconds to revive you, but this timer is removed during the main nighttime boss fights. Along with this, in case it wasn't obvious, if everyone dies here, the run is over as opposed to simply losing a level. Let's go over some details from the hub area too. Just like Elden Ring, the round table hold is the hub. To begin a run, you approach the table and select the Night Lord you want to hunt. It's vaguely similar to selecting a monster to hunt in Monster Hunter. The game then immediately puts you into matchmaking to find a group to play with, but you can also use passwords just like Elden Ring to play with friends. The hub is also populated by all of the playable characters, minus whatever character you're currently controlling. They all just stand around and say hello in the demo, but I'm guessing the full game will have them giving you bits of their story between runs in a similar fashion to Hades. There's also a sparring ground area and an outside area connected to the round table hold. Here you can test out every weapon in the game and set your character level from 1 to 15, which I assume is the max. This is neat, and I took advantage of this during my play session to test out how damage scaling worked. So stats like strength and dexterity are hidden. Like, I genuinely couldn't find a stat screen that showed them, and you can't manually raise them when leveling up, but they do still exist, and different weapons scale with different stats just like Elden Ring. To test this, I spawned in a legendary greatsword with a C scaling in strength and made my character level 15. On Wilder, the strength dex guy, a 2...
Wait, what is he talking about? Did he like just... Did he have like managed to get cheat engine working for this?
two-handed light attack stats, which the round table hold. Here you can test out every weapon in the game and set your character level.
Oh no, you can just
outside
test
area
out everything. That's
between
crazy.
runs in a similar fashion to Hades. There's also a sparring ground area and an outside area connected to the round table hold. Here you can test out every weapon in the game and set your character level from 1 to 15.
Wow, that's weird. Did you guys hear that? I didn't catch it at first, but you have a sparring ground where you can just set everything however you want just to test stuff. That's interesting.
Which I assume is the max. This is neat, and I took advantage of this during my play session to test out how damage scaling worked. So stats like strength and dexterity are hidden. Like, I genuinely couldn't find a stat screen that showed them, and you can't manually raise them when leveling up, but they do still exist, and different weapons scale with different stats just like Elden Ring. To test this, I spawned in a legendary greatsword with a C scaling in strength and made my character level 15. On Wilder, the strength dex guy, a two-handed light attack dealt 348 damage. On the Recluse, the intelligence character, it only dealt 191. The Duchess also dealt 191, and the Guardian dealt 299. So what this means is that even though you're free to use any weapon you find during a run, you still probably want to stick to your character's archetype, or else you'll have to deal with a damage penalty.
But it's not written anywhere. Man, that's typical from software again. That's not written anywhere. So basically, if you just go by the single number that they show, the quote-unquote simplified version of how they they present this game, you're basically not going to get the actual damage you see on screen because you don't get to see the scaling. If you know the scaling from previous games, then that's going to help you a lot, basically. Because even though a number says something, it's probably not going to be representative if the scaling is different, unless the scaling is actually accounted for, which is probably what they have when I think about it. Like, if you're level 15, let's say both of them, and you find a greatsword, maybe his damage number will actually be displayed lower. So that's probably what's gonna happen here. So if that is the case, then I guess there's no point in showing the scaling then. Although I say that that's not true. That is not true, guys, because maybe let's say you just started on the first day, and you get to choose between, you know, 2 weapons, a greatsword, and let's say a magic dagger, right? Let's say you're a magic character and you get to choose between a greatsword and a magic dagger. Maybe the greatsword does a little bit more damage than the magic dagger, so you pick the greatsword, but maybe at level 15, that magic dagger is gonna do like 3 times the amount of damage as your greatsword, because it has like way better scaling with your character. So there's nothing here that would like indicate that actually, you know, maybe this weapon does more base damage now, but the scaling is so much better on that other thing, you're gonna miss out on a lot of damage once you're gonna be more leveled up. So that the game does not tell you that, basically. That's my understanding of how they have things working.
I have mixed
Which is, you know, simplifying, but at a cost, right?
feelings about this, and at the very least I don't think it should be so hidden, but it is important to know so that you can be more effective during a run. The last main component of the hub is the relic altar. Here you can equip relics between runs, and each of these gives you some sort of bonus or new ability. You can equip up to 3 per character, but they're color-coded, and the relic slots are color-coded too. For example, one character might have 2 red slots and 1 blue slot, and that means you're only allowed to equip 2 red relics and 1 blue relic. I believe there's 3 or 4 different relic colors. What do these relics do? Well, a lot of them are sort of boring stat bonuses, like +4 strength or extra damage with X weapon, but a few of them are actually interesting as they can change up how you play. My favorite was the relic that enables group healing whenever you drink from your flask. This is straight out of the Elden Ring Reforged mod I played last year. I loved it then, and I love it now because it adds another layer of interactivity and synergy between players, where you're paying attention to their positioning and their health in a way that
They also mentioned on their Steam page that there will be a DLC at the end of the year. It's implied that you will only get it if you buy the deluxe edition. I wonder if it's cheaper to buy the deluxe now or to buy the standard version and wait for the DLC later. Honestly, I would just go for the standard edition and wait for the DLC because, first of all, you don't really know how long the quote-unquote fever for that game is going to last. Like the more I see things, the more I believe that no matter how the game turns out, casuals are gonna, you know, like praise from software no matter how things turn out. So I think the game is probably gonna have a shelf life, but probably not very long from what I'm understanding. And how will the game activity and the game relevance be, like, let's say in a year? Maybe it's not gonna be worth it to buy the DLC then. So I would say just wait for it. It's probably not going to be a big difference, but just wait and see. It's safer that way.
you might not have otherwise. Another fun one that's kind of similar was a relic that gave the effects of consumables you use.
Player count will go down quick, most likely. Yeah, that's what I believe too. Like quick as in, you know, every game has a huge drop in player count fairly quickly. But like when it came to Elden Ring had so much content that the player count actually stayed high for a decent amount of time.
All nearby allies. One clutch use of this was using a
You're not even sure if you'll buy the game at all? Well, that answers your question. Then don't buy the deluxe then.
gold pickled Foulfoot right before we killed the boss, that all 3 of us got extra runes. Some relics are character specific, such as the one that gives Wilder a combo attack he can use after his grapple shot that also sets his weapon on fire. Big fan of that one too. So yeah, I only got to see a few relics, but if the full game includes more of these impactful and gameplay defining cool ones, and less of the +7% to fingernail growth rate ones, I'm on board.
That's funny.
That's about all I found in the hub, but I believe they gave hints that there would be more NPCs in the full game, such as a shop where you can buy and sell relics using a special currency earned after each run. And they also said something about being able to unlock skins for each character, which I assume are just cosmetic.
DLC doesn't mean like Shadow of the Erdtree content, perhaps a new character and new bosses, and that's it. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. There's definitely way more monetization possibilities with a game like this that people might not like than a pure DLC like what we're used to and what we like when From Software does it.
Cosmetic. Okay, that about does it for details on the content of the game. So let's talk a bit about the preview event itself that I attended in Vegas. So the event was unfortunately a shit show in which people were constantly disconnecting due to network issues. Like,
Oof. 2-minute disconnect bug, guys. Guys, what did we say? Watch if they fucking get the version of Elden Ring at launch to base this on, and it still has the 2-minute disconnect. Watch if that happens. So far from what he just said, it actually sounds like they did. Holy fucking shit, man. That's insane. Let's rewatch that. I can't believe this shit.
so let's talk a bit about the preview event itself that I attended in Vegas. So the event was unfortunately a shit show in which people were constantly disconnecting due to network issues. Like, truly, it was a disaster that almost stopped us from playing at all. Basically, we got split into groups of 3 and sent to tables where there would be 3 PS5s at each table. Then, like clockwork, every 5 to 15 minutes, at least one person in each group would get booted from the game with no way to reconnect.
Oh my god, dude. Oh, oh boy, guys, you don't know. You just don't know.
From there, we'd be forced to either restart completely or push on with only 2 people while the game kept the same difficulty intended for 3. Every single person who attended
No way to reconnect in 2025. I feel like that's a bit crazy because, you know, like, in their own games, like, you can reconnect in Souls game, you know, like, if we get, like, guys, if we're playing Elden Ring together, like, we just play the game, you know, we're in Limgrave and we're beating a camp, and then, okay, like, I have to go eat, like, I'm leaving your session, I'm gonna go eat, and then you just keep on playing, you beat some crabs and etc. And then you resummon me later, and then we beat the dragon together, and basically, like, I managed to join back into your game. So they basically already do that. So I'm not really sure why you can't join back during a session here. I'm not really sure why.
or push on with only 2 people while the game kept the same difficulty intended for
I mean, in worst case, like, you join back at level 1 for all I care, but I don't think it would be very difficult to join back at the level you quit at either.
3. Every single person who attended this event experienced these issues. So I'll be
Oof. Every single person attending this event experienced these issues. That's, guys, that's a huge red flag. That's bad. That's really bad.
like clockwork, every 5 to 15 minutes, at least one person in each group would get booted from the game with no way to reconnect. From there, we'd be forced to either restart completely or push on with only 2 people while the game kept the same difficulty intended for 3. Every single person who attended this event experienced these issues, so I'll be curious to see how other attendees discuss this. I was grouped with Lobos Jr. and Oroboro, and of the many runs we attempted, we didn't get through a single one without disconnect.
Oof. Oof. The cold shower is real. Oh my god. That's so bad. That is so bad, dude. That's horrible.
We also experienced a couple desyncs where enemies would be invisible for one player while appearing normal for the other, though these only occurred after a disconnect, so it might be a non-issue under normal gameplay conditions. Despite these tech issues, I do feel like we saw pretty much everything in the demo, and we did make it to the end. So I'm doing my best to evaluate the game independently of these disconnects. And
So just the fact that it was Lobos, Oro, and Pineapple, I'm assuming, like, unlike Vaati, who was teamed up with someone who didn't know how to play, I'm assuming they probably, you know, had an experience that was closer to what you guys will have, since their team was basically composed of experienced players.
and giving FromSoft the benefit of the doubt that the actual game won't have these
Neither Oro or
independently
Vaati mentioned the shit show. Well, I mean,
disconnects, and giving FromSoft the conditions. Despite these tech issues,
maybe they assumed that it would be fixed at launch.
I do feel like we saw pretty much everything in the demo, and we did make it to the end. So I'm doing my best to evaluate the game independently of these disconnects, and giving FromSoft the benefit of the doubt that the actual game won't have these issues. The leading theory...
Dude, they have until May, right? 30th of May. They have until May to fix this. And the network test is tomorrow. Maybe we're going to get to experience that ourselves. That would that would be something if we can't get through a one match, like, without a disconnect. with Steel and I don't know who else is gonna play with us. That's gonna be something, man.
Theory is that the event space Wi-Fi was just kind of fucked with too many devices being on it. I'm leaning towards independently of these disconnects and giving FromSoft the benefit of the doubt that the actual game won't have these issues. The leading theory is that the event space Wi-Fi was just kind of fucked with too many devices being on it.
The event Wi-Fi, bro. How do they have a LAN event with Wi-Fi? Like, what the fuck? What kind of organization like fucking sets up these events? Like, that's fucking clueless, man.
These issues. The leading theory is that the event space Wi-Fi was just kind of fucked with too many devices being on it. I'm leaning toward this being true as the European Bandai event didn't have these issues. Regardless, I'm telling you this.
Optimal tournament net, like, guys, like, you know, events like that, like, you know, you get esports tournament like that are hosted like regularly. They are organization that specialize in organizing events like that where like, you know, where they set up like the consoles and everything, and they fucking they just take like the fucking Wi-Fi conference room, just hoping everything's gonna work fine and shit. That sounds like that, you know, that sounds like Clueless, honestly. Yo, Jane, thanks for the resub for 53 months, Jane. I'm glad you're back for Nightreign. I can't wait to play with you, man. We're gonna love this game. Oh, man. Fuck me.
Independently of these disconnects and giving FromSoft the benefit of the doubt that the actual game won't have these issues. The leading theory is that the event space Wi-Fi was just kind of fucked with too many devices being on it. I'm leaning toward this being true as the European Bandai event didn't have these issues.
Okay, the European Bandai event did not have these issues. So it was most definitely like their venue who was made by incompetent or was organized either by incompetent people or they didn't have the budget to like set everything properly. I don't know why, but whatever.
Regardless, I'm telling you this because I think it's important context that this is how I first experienced the game. And it's a shame I'm forced to relay my experience to you through the lens that we scuffed event. Quite frankly, I think US Bandai messed up badly, and I'd be kind of pissed if I was FromSoft.
Oh, I see what it is. Yeah. So basically, US Bandai was responsible for this. European Bandai did their job properly, but US Bandai were clueless. That's actually funny.
Aside from that, though, I did have fun. And while I think most people would have fun if they were in my shoes and got to play a co-op game with Lobos and Oro, I do think FromSoft has something here if I was able to find the fun even in the worst of circumstances. Ultimately, I think this game will be a commercial success. The fun is there and it has Elden Ring's branding. Obviously, it won't reach anywhere near Elden Ring's success, but it doesn't have to because my guess is that it only costs a fraction of Elden Ring's.
It only cost a fraction of a fraction, you know? Because everyone knows that nowadays games are sold at $100, and so it only cost a fraction, only 70. So you're basically paying the price of like what would be a full game. No, I'm just kidding, but in the future that's what it's going to be though, right? Like fast forward like a few years into the future, standard's going to be 100, and then quote unquote smaller games are basically going to be priced at the price of a full game.
Budget to develop. And of course it did. 90% of this game is just Elden Ring. And like I mentioned earlier, it feels more like an ambitious fan.
I think he means the dev cost was very low. Well, the dev cost was for sure very low, but the game will be sold at less than a full-priced game though. That's already been confirmed as well, Lizzie. Like you're going to get to pay like 40, I think. Whereas like base game is like 70 or something. I don't know, maybe it's 60 in the US, but here it's so expensive in Canada.
Fan mod than a standalone product. On that note, I think it's worth addressing the discourse surrounding this game. When Nightreign was first announced, there was naturally a lot of excitement, but there was also by far the most sinister.
Bro, I almost feel bad for that comment, bro. 40 of 60 is like 10% of something. I'm so sorry, bro. Oh, man. Let me just do you a favor real quick. Oh, my God, bro. Oh, fuck. Oops. Ah, what the fuck? There you go. All right. It's over, man. Yeah, you good. You're good now. No one will know about it.
Cynicism I've seen directed at a FromSoft project. And like, I obviously get it. The game is built out of
I love you, bro. I'm sorry.
recycled content from Elden Ring, you have bosses from past Souls games returning with seemingly no context, and the official messaging is calling it a, quote, survival game. That's all going to make people imagine something akin to Metal Gear Survive or Resident Evil Reverse, games that bastardize the IP in the name of chasing a market trend. It's a cash grab, it's publisher mandated, Miyazaki...
Wait. I wasn't even listening to what he was saying. I was just reading chat. Let me just rewind a
When
little.
Nightreign was first announced, there was naturally a lot of excitement, but there was also by far the most cynicism I've seen directed at a FromSoft project.
For good reasons. I mean, it's obviously their worst game, like from what we're seeing. It's going to be proven when it comes out. There's no doubt about that.
And like, I obviously get it. The game is built out of recycled content from Elden Ring. You have bosses from past...
I mean, objectively speaking, guys, like, all their games that have come out to this point have been, like, unique and, like, handcrafted from start to finish. Like, this is not handcrafted from start to finish. Like, well, I say handcrafted from start to finish. They obviously reused, like, a lot of models in every game, but this is really cranked up to a whole nother level.
Souls games returning with seemingly no context, and the official messaging is calling it a, quote, survival game. That's all going to make people imagine something akin to Metal Gear Survive or Resident Evil.
I think Metal Gear Survive is absolutely a great comparison to this, because the only difference between this and Metal Gear Survive is the standing of the branding of the company making the game. Because Metal Gear Survive, from a gameplay perspective, was very, like, let's not say from a gameplay perspective, but it wasn't, like, straying that far from the main game in its concept other than the core gameplay loop. Whereas this is basically doing that. It's not straying that far from Elden Ring other than the core gameplay loop. But the difference is Konami was hated at this point because they were parting with Kojima on bad terms, and so everyone was against Konami. So Metal Gear Survive was basically marked as guaranteed to fail because the perspective of the people and the branding was negative from the get-go. So if they came out with something that was wildly different like that, the perspective was definitely going to be very negative. Whereas this, everyone loves From Software. They're like one of the only studios left to make good games. Like, they're not the only one, but one of the only. Whereas every other studio is fucking drowned in some fucking shit show doing whatever. I don't know what the fuck they're doing in, like, Ubisoft and Activision and shit and BioWare, but, like, FromSoft is one of the only good ones left, so everyone always has a positive perspective going into From Software games. So whereas it's going to be different to Metal Gear Survive because of the perception, the actual product itself is actually very similar in the sense that it's recycling stuff out of the main game and then just branching out a little bit, recycling a bunch of shit. That's very similar. So the comparison absolutely has legs to stand on, for sure.
Evil Reverse, games that bastardize the IP in the name of chasing a market. Messaging is calling it a, quote, survival game. That's all going to make people imagine something akin to Metal Gear Survive or Resident Evil Reverse, games that bastardize the IP in the name of chasing a market trend. It's a cash grab, it's publisher mandated, Miyazaki sold out. There were quite a few comments expressing these sentiments.
Like, out of all the things he said, first of all, it's going to be, it's like, to From Software's credit, I actually don't believe that they make stuff for the sake of being cash grabs, or that they actually make games for the sole purpose of a bottom line. Like, I genuinely think that when From Software does something, and when Miyazaki, president of From Software, decides to greenlight something, it's because he has a reason to do it that is not necessarily motivated purely by profit. I highly doubt that. However,
it's a cash grab, it's publisher mandated.
Publisher mandate is a very real thing, though. Publisher mandate is absolutely a real thing. And believe you not, I would be shocked if this game was not the product of publisher mandate.
Miyazaki sold out. There were quite a few comments expressing these sentiments, and I'm sure some comments on this video will say the same thing. Again, I do get it. These claims aren't coming from nowhere, and there is of course reason to be skeptical. Now, even though I understand all of this, I'm not quite that cynical. Basically, I can appreciate that FromSoft wants to make a weird spin-off game on a smaller budget, while giving someone who's been at the company since Dark Souls 1.
Because the way I understand this is they probably had publisher mandate to make more Elden Ring stuff because the brand sold way too much for for From Software to be able to like just keep doing what they're doing, right? Because normally what From Software does is they do their own thing. They set their own rules. They make a project and then they branch off somewhere and do something else. Here, they probably had a mandate by, I don't know if it's Sony influence, probably not Sony necessarily. I don't know if it's Tencent. I don't know if it's Bandai Namco, the publisher, but or Kadokawa, you know, for the bottom line of the company. I don't know what or who, if it's like the board of director. I don't care, actually. I don't even care who mandated that, but I'd be shocked if it was not mandated or heavily pressured to make more Elden Ring stuff, because Elden Ring stuff sold well. And so Miyazaki, given that mandate, was like, you know what, I don't actually want necessarily to do more Elden Ring stuff right now. We have other ideas and other projects. However, we have more manpower now. Let's just give that mandate to another one of my senior director. And so he gave that opportunity for that senior director to like to pitch his idea for another Elden Ring project. So that's my understanding of how things went. Obviously, this is sort of speculative, but it's speculative based on, you know, how it basically works in every company. So I'm almost confident like that this is exactly what happened.
One, Junya Ishizaki, the chance at directing their own game. This is a practice that is pretty uncommon for AAA studios, and I think it's a shame because it leaves the industry with less experimentation and risk-taking in general. If every game by a large developer costs at least $100 million to make, you're going to see most studios play it safe. Is Nightreign the best example of FromSoft taking a risk? No, not at all. This game will sell well on brand recognition alone, but the point still stands that small projects are a space for larger developers to try new things.
The game will sell well on brand recognition alone, and that's the very reason why they would be mandated to do it, because no matter how it turns out, it's Elden Ring.
And I do think Nightreign
people are going to buy Elden Ring because they've bought Elden Ring and it was amazing.
Experiments with the Souls formula in interesting ways we'd never see from a mainline game. All that being said, I was skeptical before I even played the game, though it wasn't coming from a place of cynicism toward the industry. It instead was coming from a place of love for the action roguelike genre and wondering if Elden Ring could fit into it.
He's right.
Basically, Souls-like combat is inherently simple, and its ability to be compelling depends a lot on other aspects of the game. Take Dark Souls, for example. Combat is a core pillar of the experience, yes, but it's held up greatly by the other core pillars, like level design, thoughtful enemy placement, and exploration. But with a roguelike...
He's absolutely right on that. That enemy placement played a huge role in making Dark Souls 1, like, really good, as well as like, everything he mentions, basically. That's very true. Although I would say... like, as much as he's absolutely true in that, Elden Ring, compared to Dark Souls 1, has had many advances when it comes to combat design. Like, combat in Elden Ring is way more, it's way more polished than when they initially started. There's no doubt about that. So it has, let's say, a little more legs to stand on with the current mechanics, as opposed to when the series, or when this game genre launched, basically.
Like, due to the randomized nature of the game, you usually just have the combat.
Build making got you into these games, to be honest. Yeah, I'm going to talk about my own thoughts after that, after we're done with this vid.
And Dark Souls combat without anything else is like butter without toast. To me, it was obvious that there would need to be a lot more to make a game like this work. And they did indeed add a lot more. From the time pressure, to the character abilities, to the co-op synergy, to the map traversal mechanics, FromSoft added quite a few gameplay elements to help support Elden Ring's core combat system. So is this a complete success? I'm honestly not sure yet. I'm somewhat optimistic, but for me, a lot of it is going to depend on how much more there is to the full game. Because right now, based off what I played, I have some concerns, and the full picture isn't clear. Most of my reservations stem from me being unsure of the roguelike aspects of the game, and worrying that runs will feel too similar too quickly.
Yep, that's what I thought too.
For starters, it's unclear to me how much the map will change between runs. For this demo, as far as I could tell, it didn't change at all. We would start at one of two locations, but then that was it. All the points of interest were in the same spot, and we'd fight the same enemies and bosses. Now, of course, I do recognize that this is almost certainly just for the demo, and that the full game will meaningfully remix the map between runs, but I need to see that for myself before I vouch for this game. When I asked the Bandai representatives if they could clarify how the map would change between runs, or if there was more than one map, they were pretty cagey. They did talk about how swamps and volcanoes could drastically change things up, and the initial reveal trailer did seem to show a bit of this off, but until I see it for myself, it's unclear how meaningful these changes will be. That being said, I'm reasonably optimistic, and if I had to guess, I think the map will change a lot based off which Night Lord you select before each run. The other concern I have is just the variety in builds between runs. Due to the nature of most upgrades being small passive boosts, the way you start and end each run might be a little too similar. To put it another way, you know how in a game like Hades you get multiple gameplay defining upgrades that massively shift your build or playstyle? That part of the game is inherently less present in Nightreign. Sure, you'll find a weapon that gives plus 9% damage when two-handing, but in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay, having or not having that boost isn't going to change how you play. The same can be said about the whole leveling system. Yes, leveling up lets you deal more damage, but the way you play doesn't shift between level 1 and level 2. And as someone who's played a lot of action roguelikes, this is a notable absence. Now, to be fair, not all upgrades are like this. Stuff like the passive that gives you a lightning attack when you dodge, or the relic that gives you group healing are meaningful changes and can noticeably impact a run. So I really hope the full game has more of that. And thinking about this issue some more, we shouldn't ignore all the weapons and spells. Elden Ring might actually be a fantastic game to turn into a roguelike, if only for the variety of weapons and spells already.
He's absolutely right on that. The only issue is that you've already experienced like pretty much all of that in previous games, right? Or I say all of that, minus the new stuff that they've added, right?
Built into the game. There are over 400 weapons and over 200 spells in Elden Ring. And
that's crazy. That's a lot. There's very few games that can compete with that, to be fair.
the average Elden Ring player probably only used like less than 5% of them. But in a game where you have to use what you find and be kind of scrappy over short, repeated runs, suddenly there's an opportunity to engage with all these weapons and spells you probably overlooked.
That's very true. For us, maybe it's not like I take that for granted, for instance, because you know with the streaming and the invasions and everything, like with every weapon, we basically like did invasions with every single weapon, and then even now, like re-invading with the same build over and over, I still like play with various weapons as well. Like you get when you invade and you PvP, you get some fun out of playing with like basically every weapon. Although, like he says, for most players, that's just simply not the case. So for most players, they're gonna get to experience the vastness of the Elden Ring weaponry and like the variations in attacks and all that good stuff. But it's basically going to be incentivized within the game mechanics as opposed to a player choice.
Plus, Elden Ring has a shitload of different enemies and bosses, so again, they have a deep well to draw from. And that's on top of them bringing back bosses from past Dark Souls games. Yes, this all relies entirely on recycled content, but that doesn't change the fact that it gives FromSoft a lot to work with in terms of variety. So yeah, maybe the leveling and passives being kind of boring is actually fine within the context of the rest.
For people like us who invade and have probably seen or used every weapon dozens of times, yeah, that's what I'm saying. For those of us who PvP, like, we're definitely more in the exception of like, yeah, we like when we get to pick up whatever dagger or when we get to pick up, you know, whatever sword and whatever, like we've already used these movesets to the fullest and we're already familiar with most of it.
Rest of the game. Also,
yo, Amish, how you doing, bro? Glad to see you here, man. Hope you're doing fine.
even if the player builds are limited when compared to other roguelikes, I think there's still a lot of potential for emergent gameplay when you factor in the rest of the gameplay systems.
Emergent gameplay. See, like, I don't want to, you know, I have no idea if it's going to happen or not, but I have a hard time, like, picturing what kind of emergent gameplay could come out of this game. Because it feels definitely way more limiting than the other ones. Sometimes maybe that's when emergent gameplay comes out, but I don't know. I'm skeptical about that.
Like the synergies between different character abilities, or unexpected hazards like bosses invading you in the middle of a fight. There's also a lot to be said about the map itself.
I don't know if I would call that emergent gameplay, though. That's just straight up how they made the game. That's not necessarily emergent gameplay.
It's deeply intertwined with all the other systems. Figuring out the best way to move around the map under time.
I love to immerse myself in check notes, time-based gameplay loot. Gameplay loop, sorry. Yeah, still, I'm gonna get to that in a second.
Pressure is engaging, and simply where and when you get yourself into a fight can lead to different outcomes. So you like the game? I thought you weren't sure. Pine, you're confusing me. Let me put it like this. As a massive fan of FromSoft, Souls-likes, and the action roguelike genre, I'm in the dead center of the Venn diagram of the potential audience for this game. I had fun playing it, and I think, at worst, this game will be a fun diversion for a couple weekends with my friends.
Yes, that's exactly what I think most of us will be. Yeah. right there.
audience for this game. I had fun playing it, and I think at worst, this game will be a fun diversion for a couple weekends with my friends. It has a lot going for it. I think the time pressure is compelling. I appreciate all the co-op shenanigans, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to fighting Dark Souls 2 bosses with Elden Ring's combat. Since this demo only showed off a small part of the game, I can't be sure about everything, but the potential is there. It'll depend on how some of the systems pan out in the full release, such as how the map changes. That being said, everyone doesn't share my tastes, and the audience for this game will be more niche than Elden Ring. I think people who aren't already fans of action roguelikes might not like it at all. On top of that, I do understand the cynicism toward the amount of recycled content a game like this has. So if that's off-putting to you, I get wanting to pass on this one. Truly, I'm not going to die on any hills defending FromSoft. I think it's reasonable to be skeptical. The game comes out on May 30th, and it'll be $40 at launch. It's also going to launch with a $55 deluxe edition that'll come with DLC containing new playable characters, new bosses, and new map biomes. The DLC itself won't be available day one, but I think selling DLC at launch is something FromSoft hasn't done before. And while I don't personally have an issue with it, I do...
Wait.
But new playable characters, new bosses, and new map biomes. The DLC itself won't be truly of recycled content a game like this has. So if that's off-putting to you, I get wanting to pass on this one. Truly, I'm not going to die on any hills defending FromSoft. I think it's reasonable to be skeptical. The game comes out on May 30th, and it'll be $40 at launch. It's also going to
$40 at launch, okay? Write that down.
launch with a $55 deluxe edition that'll come with
55, so $15 DLC, $55 deluxe edition.
DLC containing new playable characters. It's also going to launch with a $55 deluxe edition that'll come with DLC containing new playable characters, new bosses, and new map biomes.
Wow, so new characters, new map biomes. So this is basically, I don't know who said that earlier, but yeah, I think it was Goldmask. Goldmask, you were right. That's basically what they're doing. They're just releasing like new characters, new maps.
Deluxe edition that'll come with DLC containing new playable characters, new bosses, and new map biomes. The DLC itself won't be available day one, but I think selling DLC at launch is something FromSoft hasn't done before. And while I don't personally have an issue...
Ooh, selling DLC at launch from software is, you know, taking these habits from these other great performing studios, right?
with it, I do understand people who do, and I don't think it's a great look for FromSoft when they already have so much cynicism and distrust surrounding the game. I strongly suspect...
I mean, the more the more we talk about this game, the more it feels like it's really a mandated game. Like it was mandated to make more Elden Ring stuff, and so they didn't want to do it, so they just, you know, they gave them the C team. You know, you guys figure something out. Oh yeah, that pitch looked good enough. Yep, you do it. That's basically what it was like.
I suspect this will be a source of controversy. So yeah, Nightreign. It's a weird game, and I don't know how the general public is going to react to it. If I had to guess, I'd say it'll be reasonably well liked, but it's probably not going to blow anyone's mind. Like I said though,
I think he's probably right. It's going to be reasonably well liked purely, and I mean it, purely because From Software can do no wrong, because they just have an impeccable track record. So everyone coming in there is very positive because it's From Software, because their history is basically battle proven. So they get to benefit from that. As opposed to, like we mentioned earlier, a game like Metal Gear Survive, where Konami had the worst standing after the departure of Kojima. So when Metal Gear Survive came out, it was the exact opposite. The game had a horrible standing to start with. So that's basically going to be the main difference here.
I think the worst case is I get to have fun with my friends for a couple weekends. So I'm looking forward to it even with all my reservations. And I would love to have the full game surprise me in ways I won't see coming. I also...
What I think is most unfortunate here is I was really hoping to be proven wrong on a lot of things that worried me about this game. A few things actually, like the way sprinting works, I think it's not going to be as bad as I initially thought. I don't think it's very it's necessarily a very, let's say, creative way to go about like first fixing, like traversing the world like that. I think there were other ways around that, but that's besides the point. From basically the sound of it, all these people that you watch on YouTube that have played this have basically had an exclusive look with exclusive relationship with Bandai and FromSoft and everything. Throwing that under the rug would be a stupid, and I mean a stupid idea. And so they always have to be respective, somewhat positive and objective. And even with that being said, I mean, Pineapple here is being very transparent with how he feels about the game. And even though he's played it, from what I understand from what he says, it's basically, because he says it's twice, like worst case is like, you know, a few weekends with friends. This is not going to be anyone's main game. That's basically what he's saying. It's going to be like a side activity, which is basically what I think we were all expecting. Not really a main thing that you'll be spending time on, because it does look like it's going to get repetitive quickly. But maybe not everyone will agree on that. Hopefully when the game comes out, some people enjoy it and spend a lot of time on it. But yeah.
Looking forward to it even with all my reservations, and I would love to have the full game surprise me in ways I won't see coming. I also think that this is the type of game that's going to be way more fun with a group of friends rather than 2 random people you find in matchmaking, so I suspect that'll play into people's enjoyment as well. At the very least, I think it's one to keep an eye on, and I'm extremely curious about people who never tried Elden Ring having this be their first exposure to the franchise.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of that, to be fair. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who play Nightreign who've never played Elden Ring. That would be surprising. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, but it's probably going to be a very small portion.
The concept of that is hilarious to me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take it easy and look out for another video this month. Peace.
All right. Well, guys, that's pretty much everything I think that there is to see. Still 2 hours of footage. Well, I mean, with reaction, 2 hours. Lots of new info, but at the same time, also a lot of new gameplay that we've seen on screen. But at the same time, the perspective on the game doesn't really change. Like, I don't think we've learned anything that changes how we view the game. And it also goes to show that the first coverage that the game had from PC Gamer was actually very accurate, because a lot of things that were mentioned there were just reiterated or confirmation of the things that were mentioned initially when we first got like the first press release, basically. So yeah, that's that. For my excitement, like I said at the beginning, I don't actually care all that much how this game turns out, because I'm so busy these days and I'll be playing it regardless, even if it's good or bad, just for the sake of the channel. And I'll be enjoying it just because I'm going to get to play this with people from chat. So that's going to be my enjoyment there. So I'm good either way. With that being said, would I be playing that if it wasn't for the channel? Absolutely not. It looks extremely bland and looks like subpar compared to what From Software has made in the past. And a lot of design decisions are basically like going more into the brainless casual route, which is not my thing. But I know it's the thing for the majority of people who play games, so it is what it is. But yeah, I'm not that excited really, but I'll still play it anyway. I'll have fun with Steel in the network test tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. What about you guys? What do you think? People in chat, how do you feel about Nightreign after seeing this? From Software can and will do better than this. Oh yeah, for sure. For the next project, it's going to be way better than this. We should make a password chat so we can all play together. That's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Boo, never touching it. You gave your codes away. Damn, Firekeeper, that's harsh. I don't like roguelites. I actually like roguelikes, and the more I hear this, the more I feel like I'm gonna resonate. Like, very likely, I'm gonna resonate with what Iron Pineapple says, that this doesn't really feel like roguelikes, even though it's kind of advertised as that. There's a lot of missing aspects to like the variety that comes with a roguelike. Whether it be like the map or the abilities themselves, or how your character progresses, how do you find stuff, where there's not a lot of variation here, basically. You'll probably buy the deluxe at launch. Hey man, nothing wrong about that, except maybe if you don't like it, there's going to be something wrong about it, but that's your choice. It will last shortly, but will be interesting to play. Yeah. Neutral as I always been. Neutral as you've always been. No buy, pass. Gonna have fun watching. Thanks, Jake. Been pretty hyped. Seems like it's a good game to play while waiting for their next game. Yeah, I think that's honestly, I hate to say that, but I feel like that's the correct take. Like, you know, just, you know, like it for what it is, and you know, in the meantime, you get something to play with, whereas otherwise you would have gotten nothing in the past while waiting for the next big From Software game. So in reality, that's pretty much what's going on. It's like either you get that or you get nothing while you wait for the next big thing, basically. I think that's what it comes down to for most people, for most of us. Absolutely no interest. Hell no, looks like the worst From Software game in years. We'll be skipping this game, most likely, and just tune in for streams. I'll probably end up buying it at some point. Not sure if it will be on launch. Who am I kidding? It's From Soft. I'll buy it day one. Yeah, exactly, Amish. See, like everyone who says who's not buying it, Amish, I feel like you like encapsulated that perfectly. I won't have anyone to play with, so I actually need to play with you guys. Hey, man, we're gonna get some chat password going on so that even though you might not get to play with me, you're probably gonna get to at least play with people from chat. Also, I wonder how solo gameplay will look like. Yeah, that's a good point for people who will play solo. Like, who knows how it's going to play out. Maybe bosses won't have, let's say, a second phase solo. I have no idea. But that's a very interesting point. It'll be okay. Really depends on how they handle the variation in DLCs. Yeah, for sure. Props to PineApple for making an unbiased review like he did. Well, I mean, to be fair, like, everyone is entitled to how they feel about the game. Like, if I didn't see what Oro's vid is, for instance, but if Oro liked it, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying he liked it. So like, I think the coverage that we've watched from Vaati and PineApple was both pretty on point. Like, you learn what there is to learn about the game. After that, you know, whether you like it or not, you don't shoot the messenger. Like, they're just going about like the stuff that they've seen in the game as objectively as they can. Especially Vaati. Like, Vaati is being very like objective with minimal like subjective thoughts sprinkled in there. Like, he still gives his thought, but way less than, let's say, PineApple, who really goes onto like half of the vid is like info about the thing and the other half is just basically his opinion, which is fine. You know, both it's fine, but it has really nothing to do with the content creators. They're just like putting out there what they see, basically. Game looking all good and shit, then you realize this is $40, not a mod on the Nexus. Bro. But yeah, I really like the Vaati and Iron Pineapple vids that we just watched. I feel like it definitely was very informative, and that's all we can ask for, really. This game got great main menu team though, dude. The UI that we've seen, I would have liked to see the actual HUD, because the UI itself in this game is actually like the best UI From Soft has ever made. And I feel like they've hired someone new in there that's just like so fucking better than everyone else that has worked there before. It's actually like incredible how like clean this UI looks. I'm impressed, dude. Like, if you ever had to design a UI and shit, that shit is a skill, man. Like, it's a skill. Designing good UI that looks pretty, that's usable, that's simple, that's not necessarily something you've seen that's copied from somewhere else. I mean, it's always copied a little bit, but that is a skill, man. That UI is pretty up there, honestly. Not buying it until you see more gameplay. Hoping to have any friends to play with will probably be a frustrating experience. Come on, Sam, you'll be in here. You'll have people to play with. Feel happy giving it away, though. Gave it a good old friend of mine. Regardless, you still watching Steel and I? Yeah, thanks, man. I choose nothing. Let streamer choose for me. Nightreign hardly seems like taking risks, sort of the opposite. I don't know. It's definitely not taking a risk when it comes to, like, if you talk about this from an investment perspective, it is not taking a risk when you're reusing the name of an already established, popular, and successful brand. Like, already you start with a major, like, heads-up advantage, basically. So that's not a risk, like a monetary risk. Like, it's not going to fail because everyone's going to buy it because it's From Software, kind of thing. Whereas maybe the gameplay here is taking a risk because it's very recycled and not something that they usually do. So I could see both sides of the coin of people saying it's a risk and not a risk. Depends on what kind of lens you look at this. I'll buy it if it turns out being way better than it looks. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I'll buy it, but it's definitely the most creatively bankrupt Soulsborne. Hey man, you know what's funny, Jane? They might actually make the most money percentage-wise out of all their projects, just because it's probably going to be like one of the projects that cost them the least. I'm just speculating, but you know, you never know. Could be. Imagine you get Mungus on your team. I hope I do, dude. You know, like, I played Dark and Darker with Steel and Mungus. Like, we teamed up together to do some Dark and Darker back then. So we might do the same, I don't know. And before people DC to play with streamer, oof, that would be bad. No character creation, so no interest. That's a base take, Credo. Yeah. That's probably like one of my main complaints about this, is the fact that they had an opportunity for so much more, because they're basically taking the base Elden Ring and then stripping away features and just sort of creating something a little different out of it. But there's so much that they stripped away that they could have kept that would have elevated the game. Let me give you an example. If they kept character customization with like armor pieces and stuff, or even better, if they kept like character customization in a way where you get to keep some, like the last set of armors, or I don't know, like some of the stuff that you find armor wise, then there's an incentive to build the fashion of your character through each of these runs, basically. And let's say you only get to keep the armor that you find, or one piece of the armor that you're wearing, or that you found for each run. So you get to build up your fashion over time through these runs. Already there, you have more of a reward incentive to go through these. Whereas here, from everything we've watched so far, I don't really see an incentive to play these runs, other than, yeah, you get to play these, you win, youpee, you know, you do another one with your friends and have fun and start over. It's basically like, it reminds me a little bit of the problems we have with invasions in Elden Ring. There's like no reward and no point to do it other than the gameplay itself, which can get stale and repetitive over time, especially when there's not as much player input that's at play here. Because when in invasions, the experience is always very different, purely because you're playing against other humans. Here, that's definitely not the case. Yes, you're playing with other people, but your enemies here don't really seem to vary all that much for the most part. So one of my biggest criticism here is I feel like this project actually has a lot more potential than what it seems like it's doing, and it passed up on a lot of opportunities to keep good features and integrate good features and good ideas. Like character customization would have been a perfect fit for a game like this, for instance. Or build making also. I don't like how this game got casualized though, because it seems like some sort of seamless with randomizer to me now, but easier. Yeah. We'll have to choose between Nightreign and Monster Hunter Wilds. Oh, sorry. Monster Hunter Wilds. Still undecided. Seamless Nightreign mod will bring PvP lit by activating friendly fire. Yeah. Wait for Nightreign being unplayable on PC unless you play on Seamless. Yeah, I hope the 2-minute disconnect doesn't come back. That would be horrible. Install boss and item randomizer on Seamless and play with friends. Boom, you got Nightreign at home. That's funny. You didn't see the HUD yet? No, I didn't, Steal. Did they show the ultimates are big on the screen though? Yeah, that looks like a bad idea to me though, Jake, but I haven't seen the actual HUD, so I can't really comment on that. We'd be rather stuck playing Ninja Blade than touch this. Or did they scale it up to be visible? Oh, Steel sent me the HUD. Let me just look at that real quick. This. Oh, would you look at that? Let me just bring this real quick. One sec. I'm doing this like little old-fashioned way. Okay, give me 1 sec, guys. Actually, let me play that in the meantime.
Elden Ring's DLC is designed for endgame characters. Level 150, fully upgraded weapons, armor, talismans, spirit summons. Recently, I got the chance to play Elden Ring Nightreign early at a hands-on preview event
1 sec,
hosted in
guys.
Vegas. In case you missed it, Nightreign is the next game From Software is releasing, and according to them, it's a quote, co-op action survival game. What is it really? It's essentially Elden Ring remixed into an action roguelike for 3 players, where each run sees you fighting enemies and collecting loot in a shrinking Fortnite-esque circle. When the circle fully shrinks, you're forced into a nighttime boss fight. The game has you fighting Elden Ring enemies and bosses, but you'll also encounter bosses from past Dark Souls games occasionally too, like the Nameless King. If you make it to day 3, you get to fight one of the 8 Night Lord final bosses, and winning here equals a success.
Sorry, give me 1 sec, guys. Let me just pull that up real quick. Let me pull that. Can I put this in there? Will this work? Yes, it will. All right. There you go. All right, let's see that. I zoom in. Okay, that's a blurry mess, but we're gonna work with it. So the HUD here basically did not really change all that much. And the size of the special ability is not as big as you guys might have feared. Let's just like that. All right, there you go. So there you go, guys. Well, if you wanted to see the HUD, thanks, Steel. I appreciate that. Let me pull this back up though. Just putting that back in here. All right. I mean, the HUD really didn't change all that much, really. It's very similar to what we have. But the UI looks great, though. And I mean, the little team they have going with the blue and everything, I like it. I think it looks cool. The fact that this is only $40 actually makes me a bit nervous, as if the developer is saying, keep your expectations in check, people. That's, man, of course Amish would show up here in this stream, has not in a while, just for the biggest fucking truth bombs about Nightreign that there is. Right? I mean, I think you're absolutely right on that. You are. I think you really nailed it with that. Yeah, that's probably the reality. Yeah, for sure. I'm too late on chats. Let me roll back. Wow, okay. Well, guys, that's Elden Ring Nightreign for you. At least the stuff we know so far. I just realized I thought tomorrow was the network test. It's the day after tomorrow, so not yet tomorrow quite. The day after tomorrow will be the network test. Pineapple posted it like 3 times that it feels like a fan mod. Yeah. Painted the planted? Oh no. Plant, is that you? Did you steal Painted's account? Oh man. Yeah, Friday Nightreign. Exactly, Jake. It's gonna be Friday Nightreign. Well, guys, I think that's I think we went over everything. Big thanks for the creators who shared their thoughts and made some vids like that, so that we can get a glimpse of what it is 2 days early. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are not too disappointed with Nightreign. I mean, we're still gonna get to experience it in a few days, so where everyone is gonna get to see for themselves what it's actually like. At least those who got a code. But yeah, I guess that's gonna be it for me though. I'm gonna go probably edit this stream and make some content out of that. I'll probably just you know, make it 2-hour 30 vids out of this and just call it a day, but we'll see. But yeah, guys, thanks everyone for coming by. I appreciate you guys. We're gonna get to play together the network test, I'm sure. And I'll see you guys then. Maybe I'll play some Elden Ring in between. Not sure, because the network test is coming up quite soon, actually. But have a good night, Rain, everyone. I'll catch you guys up soon. All right, take care, guys.